Oh, let's get rid of this.
That's it. Welcome, everyone. The sun is shining and Joan just commented outside. The leaves are all out, which is really nice to see as well. So, so week 30, oh my goodness. I think we say this every week, but it went really fast for us anyway. So self-led relationship repair. So we only have a couple weeks left. So the next 3 weeks, so week 31, bringing meaning and purpose into your life, our circle of meaning session. And then week 32, get prepared. It's Joan and I's end of the year special for course highlights, feedback, and brunch. And the last week, which is a pilot session, is on sexuality, and that's on June 10th. So just warning about the meditation, feel free to skip that, but first we will check in with our dashboards. What is the current risk that you'll experience a state of crisis? Think about that. Is it low, moderate, high, very high, or extreme? Are you in the window of tolerance? Yes, maybe you're a little outside, or maybe you're very outside. Where is your energy tank right now? Are you full, 3/4, half, maybe near empty? Have you been tracking your targets using the Holt's Diary card? And how would you rate your targets right now? And the last one is, how well am I focusing on what I'm doing? Example so far this morning. Okay, so this is the 5-minute guided harbor meditation. Begin by settling in. Allow your body to find a posture that feels steady but not rigid, supported yet spacious. Take a slow breath in and a long, gentle breath out. Let the pace of your breathing begin to match the calm rise and fall of the sea. Now imagine you are a ship on open water. Feel the quiet strength of your hull beneath you, the gentle rocking of the waves, the vast sky spreading out in every direction. You are capable. You have weathered storms. You know how to navigate. But every ship needs a harbor. Ahead of you, notice a harbor coming into view. Your harbor, a place meant for you, a place of refuge, repair, and belonging. The water becomes calmer as you approach. The air softens. The lighthouse glows with a steady, warm light, a reminder that guidance is always available when we allow ourselves to receive it. As you enter the harbor, notice the docks extending toward you like open arms, ready to welcome you exactly as you are, tired or strong, confused or clear, hurting or hopeful. There is no performance here. No need to justify your presence. This harbor exists simply because you exist. Now slowly imagine dropping anchor. Feel the gentle heaviness as you settle, the sense of being held, of being allowed to stop trying, just for these moments. Let the soft waves lap against the sides of the ship. Let your nervous system feel the rhythm of safety. Pause here, breathing, resting, arriving. In this harbor, your inner world becomes quiet enough for you to listen. Perhaps a part of you that has been anxious can exhale. Perhaps a part that has been avoidant can come a little closer. Perhaps a part that has been wounded or vigilant can feel just a hint of what safety might be like. You don't need to fix anything. Just allow these parts of you to be near the shore, warmed by the lighthouse, soothed by still water, held without pressure. Now take a moment to imagine that this harbor is not outside you. It is within you. The lighthouse is your own awareness. The calm waters are your own breath. The welcoming docks are the compassion you offer yourself. And the steady foundations are the parts of you that have survived every storm to this day. You are not looking for a safe harbor. You are building one. Take one more slow breath in and gently release it. Feel the quiet anchoring inside your chest, the soft steadiness in your belly, the warmth of your own presence. When you are ready, slowly lift the anchor, knowing that you can always return to this harbor, to this breath, to this inner place of safety.
There's also an alternative 5-minute guided meditation that if you want, please go back to the slides and review. Few reminders. That was our homework from last week. Reading session 28 of the manual. Homework for next week. Reminder to submit questions or comments to our email. Use all the tools and skills and start thinking about and getting us your feedback for the course. Complete the online feedback form. And Dr. Clay, is that already available on the website? Yes. Here is the list of our homework habit checklists. Just review if you need help getting that homework done. Okay, so simple course weeks 31 and 32. So next week and the week after. The following slides will be helpful for weeks 31 and 32 of the simple course. They have been emailed out. If you didn't get them, please email us. You can also find them on the website. In week 31 of the course, our Circle of Meaning session will be considering the concept of the cosmic egg, which proposes 3 levels of stories that underlie our sense of meaning. We've already emailed out slides which will help you prepare for that session. We are really hoping there will be a lot of participation. We won't read these slides today. We just want to make them available to you so you have an opportunity to work on them ahead of time. So your life's meaning and purpose. Before you work on this session, we invite you to reflect your sense of meaning and purpose. It may help to complete the meaning in life questionnaire and the purpose in life scale. And we had talked about that, and I forget which week that was, but we did talk about those 2 questionnaires. So those are the meaning of life questionnaire, if you want to write that down.
No, those are just.
Do you want me to go through this one?
So you don't have-
We don't have to go through this one?
Just sort
Okay,
of- I just made them available on the website.
okay. And then there's the purpose and life scale. So here are the meaning and life questionnaire. Right? And then I won't read over, that gives some information on how it's scored. And then this is the purpose and life scale. Right? And it has the scoring key that's available there as well. And this kind of goes through the interpretation of your score. So please go back and review these slides. Do you want me to go through this here? The my story? That's okay. Right? Kind of gives you some prompts on if you're struggling to find your meaning in life. Exploring meaning. Okay. So it says, I believe in, seeking to understand myself, society, and the universe, while remaining mindful that I do not have access to ultimate truths. Embracing stories about myself, society, and the universe that are true, good, and beautiful. Allowing these stories to guide my life. It's beautiful, beautiful quote. And here is the cosmic egg of meaning, which is exploring my story, our story, and the story circle of meaning session. We'll do that next week. And there's 3 levels of meaning: mine, ours, and the stories. And we'll do an introduction to the cosmic egg, going through my story, our story, and the story. Lots of information there that we encourage you to go back and review in preparation for next week. It's my story. Who am I? Ask yourself that. Who am I? Our story. Where do I belong? Finally, the story. Why are we here? And there's some great prompts there to help you get some ideas. And then we'll reflect across the 3 stories. And then we're going to rewriting a story. If you could rewrite a story, which story to feel more truthful or meaning? Yeah, go back. And then week 32, that's next week. The week after is week 32. The following slides will help think about the course and give us feedback in week 32, which is on June 3rd. We won't read all of those slides today. We just want to make sure you have them. So everything is here from this week's session for next week and the week after. Here is the course survey, kind of the evaluation form that we use. Here's a copy of it there, and there's a link to that scale right here on the web on this slide. And it goes through a bunch of questions. And on week 32, we'll use the following questions to guide our feedback discussion. Please reflect on these questions beforehand. Lots of questions: what you found most helpful, what was less helpful, process and pacing. Those are some of the topics we're looking for feedback from. Group experience, integration and carrying forward, and suggestions for improvement. That's a copy of the form again. Here. So weekly announcements. So in 2 weeks, as we said, week 32, we'll have brunch. We hope to have a rough idea of how much food and drinks to bring. If you're attending in person today, we'll do a show of hands now. So if people who are here today, how many of us plan on being at the brunch week 32? Good, thank you. If you're if you're on Zoom today, please raise your hand now if you're coming in person on June 3rd. Keep it raised until Lauren or Peg have counted everyone.
If they use the emoji, that would be more helpful.
Use the emoji if you have that. Would be helpful.
And if you're having trouble using the emoji, I know some people using tablets or their phones have trouble with that. Maybe send a message to myself or Peg.
Okay, we'll give a couple minutes there. Thank you for that feedback.
You mean all the numbers? But you're on 8 for.
There's still people raising hands, I suspect. Let us know, Peg, if you're ready to continue.
I see 3 hands raised. I've taken the names down.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll continue.
Yeah, they would go to 11. Yeah, without the facilitators.
Thank you for that. And if you change your mind, just email us. We just want a rough idea for how much food and drinks to bring. And just a reminder about today, we're going to 1 p.m. unless you collapse before then. Feel free to leave earlier if you want to. It's just our reminder participant agreements. I won't read through that today. Oh, we're going to do a poll right now. We didn't type one out for here. Sorry.
Okay. You can skip the whole.
Okay, we're going to skip over the poll right now. This is what we'll do today. We're going to talk about healthy and unhealthy relationships, relationship holes, and how to repair them. And before we begin, we'll do a blessing for empathy and emotional connection. May your heart grow soft to subtle stirrings within and between. May you learn to hear not only the words, but the silences, the sigh behind the sentence, the ache behind the anger, the longing behind the pause. May your presence become a refuge for the ones you love, not because you have the answers, but because you offer your listening as a gift. May you have the courage to reveal your own inner world, not polished, not perfect, but true, so that love can find real ground to root and rise. May empathy become more than a feeling, but a way of being, slow, spacious, tender. And may your connections deepen, not through agreement, but through shared vulnerability, through kindness, and through care. Takes us to the start of the session.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Left side of the screen.
Yeah, I'll try. Just I have to change the connection. That's a shorter connection, so from here to there. I'll try the other connection, which will allow me to move the podium. I'm hoping it'll work. Let me try this. Hold on. Okay, it worked. All right. Okay, you guys ready? 4 hours? Really?
Not sure about that.
Okay,
Did you bring
we'll
snacks?
see. No, I brought snacks for myself. All right, let's see. So in sessions 24 to 29, which were the internal family systems sessions, we explored internal family systems, and we've learned that internal family systems sees the self-assuming leadership of yourself, of a person's parts, as an important step in healing and growth. Okay, so self-assuming leadership is important in healing and growth. Okay? So today we're going to see how relationship repair, right? Healing and growth involves self-assuming leadership of the parts of everyone in the relationship. So not just your parts, but everybody in the relationship. All right. Self can be mindful of our own parts, but yourself, right, can also be aware and understanding of parts of people we're in a relationship with, right? So we're often saying, oh, this person's this and that. So if you use self-language, say this part, you start to think about this person's parts, right? You start to think of your parts, you also start to think of this person's parts. Now, some people may have very dominant parts that, are there all the time. And it's tempting to say, this is what this person is, because that part is just so dominant, present all the time. We're going to start trying to think about the relationships that we're in as we're in relationship with parts, not just with one person, right? Same way we think about ourselves, not just with one person, but made up of different parts. So this is going to be key to healing relationships, right? All right. So these are some of the topics we're going to cover today. I'm just going to briefly mention them. We talk about relationships, health, and happiness. What are some of the major factors affecting the quality of relationships? Why are intimate relationships sometimes so difficult? We're going to talk about attachment issues and intimate relationships, common relationships, conflict patterns. Is relationship repair possible? Does the repair of relationship holes require different tools, skills, or strategies than the ones you've already learned? Then weighing staying, leaving, or staying and working towards change, because those are your options. We're going to talk about options you have in intimate relationships. We're going to talk about 3 intimate relationship repair approaches. IFS's approach to relationship repair. You're the one you've been waiting for, which is the name of a workbook for relationship repair. It's kind of like the twin of the book we used, the Internal Family Systems Workbook. So this is Internal Family Systems Workbook is more for individual work, whereas You're the One You've Been Waiting For. It's also by Richard Schwartz, and it's more about how to heal relationships. We're going to talk a little bit about that, and we're going to end with some algorithms for relationship repair. And Joan, Nicole, and Stu, I have a couple of scenarios, right? And you're going to play, how to repair relationships in a couple of scenarios. Okay, so that's the plan for today. So let's start with relationships, health, and happiness. So what's the connection between happiness, health, and relationships? Is there a connection? And imagine you can try to guess at that answer. So this is one of my favorite studies. It's called the Harvard Study of Adult Development. I've already talked about it earlier, some time ago. I forget which session it was, but this was a study that began in 1938. So that's a long time ago. That was even before I was born. Not much, but a little bit, right? And it's actually still ongoing to this day, right? So it's almost 90 years old, right? It's one of the longest running studies of adult development that's ever been done. The study followed 2 groups of men. One group consisted of 268 Harvard College sophomores, including President Kennedy. He was one of, and there were several other famous men in that group. And the other was a group of 456 disadvantaged inner city youths from Boston. So this study was in Boston. It was Harvard, right? So these men were followed until their death, right? So there's very few that are still alive. They'd be like in their late 90s. When they married or had children, what happens that the study started studying those relatives of these men and tracking their family members. So that's a lot of the people in the study are family members of the original participants. So every year, the Harvard study collected extensive information about the participants, about their physical and emotional health, relationships, and overall well-being. They didn't know what they were looking for. They were just collecting information, and it wasn't necessarily about mental health. It was also about physical health. And they were given like a large amount of money, right? And they just said, well, let's do this. Let's see what we can find from following these men. So the study has provided valuable insights into what factors contribute to a happy and fulfilling life, and has helped researchers better understand the connections between lifestyle, relationships, and overall health. There's one of the directors, his name was, or still, I think he's still alive. He must be like in his 90s now, but his name was George Valiant. And he wrote few books about this study. Right, and they're wonderful to read. This guy's a wonderful writer. One year we invited him to come to Stratford. We used to have a date psychiatry here, and he was just so. At that point, he was like in his early 80s, and he was just great. So he came and we met him, and that was one of my psychiatric heroes. Right? So investigators now using AI, sorry, Elaine and Paul, right, have been mining the troves of information that gathered, because you can imagine they have like tons of information from these participants. And from this data have come numerous books and countless academic articles. And what I want to give you right now is I want to give you just some of the most important findings of the Harvard longitudinal study of adult development. Okay, so what are some of the most important findings? And it relates back, as you might not be surprised, to relationships, health, and happiness. So one of the most consistent findings in this study is that good relationships are key to a happy and fulfilling life. Sure, you're not surprised by that, okay? The study found that the quality of relationships with family, friends, and community members was a strong predictor of our overall well-being and happiness. Okay, so quality of relationships, mostly with intimate people, but with other people as well. The second, major finding from the study was that social connections are important for physical and mental health. And today we have this epidemic of loneliness, and you kind of wonder how that affects our physical and emotional health, because this is social connections are so important for physical and mental health. They're so protective. The studies show that individuals with strong social connections tend to live longer and have better physical and mental health outcomes. The third finding, major finding, there's a lot of findings, but one of the major ones is that personal growth and development continue throughout life. So for people who think, oh, I'm too old to change, that's not true. What the study found following these people is that they might have had trouble even up to age 60 or 70, but sometimes like something happened that things change for them. So things can always change for the better. The study demonstrated that individuals have the capacity for personal growth and development well into old age, challenging the notion that personality is fixed and unchanging. So I think that's really good news, right? The fourth, one of the major findings of the study is that happiness is contagious. So the study found that happiness spreads through social networks, suggesting that our own happiness can be influenced by the happiness of those around us. And I'm sure, that's very intuitive. People around you are not happy, you're not going to be very happy. If they're happy, like that kind of lifts your spirits, right? So the Harvard longitudinal study of adult development has provided valuable insights into what factors contribute to a fulfilling and meaningful life, highlighting the importance of these 4 essential cornerstones of health and happiness. Okay, and this guy, Robert Waldinger, he's the current director of the study. Right, so there's been many directors across time, so across the 90 years of the study. But Robert Waldinger, he's an interesting guy because he's a psychiatrist. He's also a Zen sensei, which is kind of like a Buddhist monk. So I invite you or encourage you to check out he has a lot of videos on YouTube. So check out some of his videos. This guy's like pretty happy, and it's contagious listening to him. You feel kind of a little bit happy. And this is a quotation from Waldinger. He said, "A toxic relationship is one in which we can't get to a point we're okay with each other." Okay, so sometimes we expect our relationships to always be happy, but that's not the way it works, right? But if there are times you can get to the point where you're okay, that's what you can expect for a relationship, right? And like when you're going through difficult times, this is what I've realized, being married for almost 40 years, is that when I'm going through difficult times, it's often more on me. It's what's happening with me. I have to understand that rather than, blame it on my wife, right? So what's happening with me? And if I can kind of understand that and work with that using, internal family systems, things go better. So, but if you can get to a point you're okay, that's a really good sign for a relationship. It means it's not a toxic relationship. So just want to touch on major dimensions and factors affecting the quality of relationships. So we're going to be looking at what make relationships good and what don't make relationships good. So what are the factors affecting the quality of relationships? So let's look at that. But first I want to, because this is a little bit technical language, because we're talking about dimensions and factors, and you're kind of going, what is that? Well, what's the difference? So I want to define that for you, because this is important in the literature, right? So what is the difference between relationship dimensions and relationship factors, right? So let me describe the difference. So relationship dimensions are the core experiential qualities of the relationship itself. They describe what the relationship feels like and how it functions when you're inside of it, what it feels like and how it functions. Okay, so what it feels like to you. Those are the dimensions, what it feels like to you. For example, do you feel trust in this other person? Do you feel emotional safety? Do you feel there's mutual care? Do you feel there's good boundaries between you? Do you feel able to repair when something goes wrong? Do you have, shared meaning? Do you also have autonomy mixed with interdependence? So you can think of these as the health indicators or outcomes of a relationship. So that's what it feels like. Okay, that we call those relationship dimensions, what it feels like. So, so how do you get to dimensions, right? And this is where relationship factors come in. So relationship factors are the inputs, capacities, and conditions that shape those dimensions. So dimensions is what it feels like, but the factors is what you bring into the relationship. Your own stuff that you bring into it. So relationship factors describe what each person brings, what skills they have, what pressures are acting on the system, the relationship system. So what are you bringing? You're bringing your attachment style, you're bringing your capacity for emotional regulation, you're bringing communication skills, you're bringing your personality traits. We talked about Ocean, so you're bringing that. You're bringing stressors from, your life, independent of this person, and you're bringing a bunch of other things. So what you're bringing into the relationship are the factors, right? But dimensions are what the relationship feels like. Is that difference clear for people? Okay, because we're going to be talking about these two and the importance in how these determine the quality of your relationships. So dimensions is what is happening in the relationship, right? Right. Factors is what each person is bringing into it and why, what is happening in your relations is happening, right? Because you're bringing stuff into it. So two couples, I might just sit down for a bit because, so two couples may value the same dimensions, okay? So they both want trust, safety, and intimacy, but differ greatly in the factors available to sustain them. So we all want, these dimensions. We want to be trusting. We want to feel safe. We want to feel intimate, right? But sometimes, what we're bringing to the relationship, and it's not that we made a choice, right? But some of the things that we're bringing to relationship may make it difficult for us to have those dimensions within that relationship. So this distinction between dimensions and factors helps shift conversations from blame, which would be asking a question such as, what's wrong with us? All right, to understanding and leverage, which is what factors could we strengthen to improve these dimensions? How can we improve how this relationship feels? How can we change some of those factors, right? And that's why, if you're coming to a course like this, you're trying to change some of the factors, right? And that's going to have an impact on relationship dimensions. Okay, so dimensions predicting relationship quality. So let's look at some of the dimensions predicting relationship quality. So remember, this is like what the relationship feels like, not what you bring into the relationship. So what the relationship feels like and how it functions when you're inside of it. So what are the good things that a relationship feels like that is going to make you happy with that relationship? Okay, what are those things that make people happy with relationships? All right. So there are 8 essential dimensions, okay, features of a relationship, what the relationship feels like, that reliably predict relationship quality across the lifespan. So 8 dimensions. So, trust. Do you trust that other person? Right? Emotional safety. Do you feel safe with that other person? Mutual care and responsiveness. Boundaries. Communication and repair. Shared meaning and values. Autonomy and interdependence. And emotional regulation, self and co-regulation. So if those things are present in your relationship, you're going to have this feeling that this is a good relationship. I feel good in this relationship. Not surprising. Okay, let me go over those briefly just to kind of give you a little bit more information about each one of them. So trust is the foundational dimensional. Trust means I can predict your emotional responses. You will not intentionally harm me. You repair with me when something goes wrong. That's trust, okay? Low trust leads to anxiety, hypervigilant distancing, or conflict cycles. High trust leads to nervous system calm, openness, and exploration. Okay? So that's the foundational dimension. All the other ones rest on that one. The second one is emotional safety. What does that mean? So a relationship where you can show your true feelings without fear. Okay? Safety includes no shaming or ridicule, consistent attunement, capacity for calm conflict resolution. This is the safe harbor quality in attachment. Right? The third dimension that makes for quality of relationships is mutual care and responsiveness. So this is not just caring for each other, but caring for each other in practice. It includes support during stress, willingness to help, remembering what matters to the other person, empathic responses to emotional needs. And insecure relationships often lack reciprocity or consistency. Okay? Right. Keep working through these. I think you probably have an idea of what boundary means. So boundaries are healthy relationships require flexible, respectful boundaries. Boundaries determine where I end and you begin, what I take responsibility for, what I will and will not accept. So too rigid boundaries leads to emotional distance, and too porous leads to enmeshment and codependence. Okay? Went the wrong way there. Another dimension is communication. And communication is not just about talking, but it's how much of what you say is understood. Okay? Healthy communication involves clarity, active listening, curiosity, speaking from parts that aren't blended. So that's an IFS lens. Repair after misunderstandings. And communication is the bridge between two inner worlds. The sixth dimension is that contributes to you feeling that you're in a good relationship is shared meaning and values. What does that mean? Deep relationships involve some degree of shared worldviews, priorities, life direction, meaning making, rituals, culture, or spiritual orientation. So the more of these you have in common, you're going to feel better about the relationship. Right? 7, autonomy and interdependence. 2 poles that must be balanced. Autonomy means I have my own identity, right? I'm separate from you. And interdependence, I can depend on you and you on me. So you have to balance that, not go too much one way or the other. And lastly, number 8 is emotional regulation between partners. So great relationships don't avoid stress. They regulate through it. So it's not avoiding stress. Like, same thing for individuals. You can't always avoid stress, but it's like, how do you get back into that window of tolerance? And you're in a couple, how you get back into that window of tolerance, right? And, that's something that I've learned because, many years ago, if my wife and I kind of had an argument, it would last, we would have kind of, be sore or hurt for a while. Now it doesn't last nearly as long. You kind of get over it, right? And that implies a lot of the other things, right? Like trust and being able to repair. So disorganized or trauma-driven dynamics often fail here. Okay. Oops. What happened there? Your default speaker has changed to speaker on. Okay. I don't know what happened there. Can you still see
I can see.
you can see the slides? Okay. So I'm going to skip over that. I said earlier, my computer's getting pretty old. So I think I'm going to try to, we have only 3 more sessions. I'm going to use this one for the rest, and then I'm going to get a new one next year. All right, I'm going to skip over that, but welcome you to go back because this describes, those 8 dimensions. And in terms of a harbor, right, what does each of those 8 dimensions represent in the harbor, right?
Dr.
So,
Lito,
yeah.
I can see the slides on Zoom, but the projector isn't working.
Oh. Okay. I think the equipment is getting tired of this course. It's served us well, right? Okay, I think we got it back up. All right, well, I'll try not to shake things too much. Don't breathe on it. Okay, all right. So if you want to look at that metaphor, look at those slides. All right. So, we've talked about, those 8 things that make a relationship feel good, right? And now we're going to talk about factors. Again, factors are the things you bring into the relationship, right? That affect the quality of a relationship. So factors are the inputs, capacities, and conditions that shape what the relationship feels like and how it functions. Those are things like your attachment style, your capacity to self-regulate. So we're going to look at those things, right? All right. So these are the factors affecting the quality of intimate relationships. Not surprising, your attachment style affects the quality of your relationship because that's what you're bringing to the relationship. Your communication skills, your ability to emotionally regulate, right? Not just with your partner, but yourself. Your capacity to support others, your ability to resolve conflicts, trust and safety, physical intimacy and affection, external stressors, individual well-being, so commitment and investment, novelty and growth, the personality characteristics and growth mindset. I'm not going to go over all of those, right? Because it's a long list. I've listed them all, but some of them you can just read on your own. Just going to name some of the more important ones. So this is not going to be a surprise. This is a bit of a review for you guys, right? But so these are the factors. Remember, these are the things you're bringing into the relationship. Factors affecting the quality of intimate relationships. So obviously, can you see over the?
Yeah.
Can you see okay? Okay. So obviously, this is no surprise to you because we talked a lot about attachment. Attachment styles affect the quality of your relationships, right? So early experiences with caregivers influence how people connect emotionally. Your communication skills are going to affect the quality of your relationships. Clear, honest, and empathic communication supports trust and intimacy. Poor communication often leads to misunderstandings and resentment. Your capacity to emotionally regulate, the ability to manage one's emotions, especially during conflict, greatly affects relationship stability and satisfaction. Mutual support. Partners who feel seen, supported, and validated tend to experience stronger bonds. Conflict resolution ability. It's not whether conflict happens, and we've emphasized that because that's inevitable, but how it's handled. Repairing after arguments is crucial. Okay. Later today, I have kind of this metaphor that we use, which is, in the winter, there's always going to be potholes that are going to form on your road, right? But if you don't repair those potholes, that road is going to deteriorate very rapidly. So it's not that potholes are inevitable because there's winters and weather and stuff, but it's how well you repair. And relationships are the same. So if you're going to develop potholes, they may be little ones. And if you come along and you're able to kind of repair, asphalt over that pothole, that road stays, very pleasant. You can travel on it. But if you don't repair that pothole, it grows bigger and bigger and bigger, and there's more and more potholes. And before long, that road is, you just can't travel on, right? Because it's so unpleasant. All right. Shared values and goals, alignment, or at least respect around big life goals, values, and priorities strengthen intimacy over time. Yeah, so there's, this is really important. There's a few things when couples have arguments because they don't look at, they look at concrete issues, right? They don't look at what's my ability to repair, what's my communication style. That's hard to kind of conceive. But what people bring often is like, we disagree on these things, right? So there's a number of topics that people typically disagree on, like who cleans the house, who cooks, who does how much, who contributes how much to the household. Okay? The other thing is sexuality. The other thing is how to parent, right? How to deal with families, right? Money. So there's a number of things, and if your values align with those things, it makes it easier. If your values are very, very different, it can make it harder. So if you have somebody who's like spends money very freely and someone who's very frugal, that can be like a source of conflict for people. Okay? All right. So those are shared values and goals. Trust and safety, feeling emotionally and physically safe is foundational. Betrayal, emotional or otherwise, can deeply harm relationships. Physical intimacy and affection, touch, sex, and non-sexual affection help maintain closeness depending on each partner's needs and preferences. External stressors, financial pressures, work stress, health issues, or family conflicts can strain relationships, especially if partners don't team up to face them. Individual well-being. So individual mental health, individual self-esteem, and emotional maturity of each partner impact what they bring into the relationship. Commitment and investment, feeling mutually committed, not just out of obligation, but desire, strengthens resilience through hard times. Novelty and growth. Relationships thrive when they keep evolving, with partners discovering new experiences together rather than stagnating. Right? And this is how Ocean traits, if you remember, those are the big 5 personality traits. So openness, conscientiousness. We talked about this when we talked about personality. Introversion, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. So we all lie somewhere on the spectrum of these things, if you remember from personality discussions. So how do those impact? How do our personality traits impact on relationship quality? And this shows you, right? So the yellow is a positive impact, and the orange is negative impact. So you can see here, if you have neuroticism, right, which is like, neuroticism is like thinking, mulling things over, not letting go, kind of ruminating on things and worrying a lot, that can have a negative impact, largely a negative impact on relationships. Not surprising, right? Agreeableness, not surprising. It has like a really positive impact on relationships. Introversion, extroversion, it's kind of like a little bit, can go either way, right? But conscientiousness, right? Conscientiousness has a pretty significant positive, the more conscientious you are, it has a positive impact, right? So conscientiousness, like if you have an appointment or if you agree to meet at a certain time, you're on time. That's like one feature of conscientiousness. And, my wife and I are both very punctual. And it's kind of like, if somebody's more than 15 minutes late, so you can imagine that you're punctual and your partner's like always showing up half an hour late, right? That doesn't, it's not the only factor, right? But doesn't probably create a good atmosphere. All right, but there's many things. So I'm not going to go into this, but I will invite you to read it. So what does growth and fixed mindset mean? Read it on your own because we don't have time today. I think I have about 250 slides or something. So, all right. So let me just grab the water here. Oops. Can I read my water there? All right. So now we've talked about the dimensions and factors that affect relationship quality, right? Hope that was clear. But that sets us up for this next discussion, which is why are intimate relationships so difficult? Okay, that's the $64,000 question. Okay. So, and I titled this slide, the hidden emotional engine beneath or underneath rational arguments. What does that mean? So most people in intimate relationships, such as parent-child or couples, believe that when they're arguing, they are disagreeing over the content of the dispute. Who said what? Who forgot what? Who's right or wrong, right? The real engine driving such arguments is, however, almost always emotional rather than rational. When we're arguing about the dishes, right? We're not really arguing about the dishes. That's the point we're making here. Underneath the surface of those rational, the dishes, or you don't kind of do enough of this disciplining with the kids, or you forgot my birthday or Mother's Day or whatever. Underneath the surface, one or both people feel misunderstood, hurt, or unseen. Okay? And, when you think about internal family systems, you kind of begin to see that something was triggered in you, right? A part gets triggered. That emotional pain activates protectors, often the form of anger, right? Because you feel hurt. That's like the exile. Often anger, defensiveness, or criticism. And these protectors start talking to each other instead of the partner's deeper, softer selves. So you go very quickly. What happens when you're having a disagreement is that your parts start talking to the other person's parts, right? And those patterns we're going to see later, but those patterns are very similar from one time to another, right? But it's like always the same parts talking to the other same parts of your partner. Okay. So, what looks like a disagreement is actually hurt parts protesting their pain, right? The sequence in such an argument is typically trigger event, small or large, right? So something triggers, one person feels unseen, misunderstood, or disrespected, their protective anchor activates in the form of retaliation, sarcasm, or shutting down, right? And then the other person feels attacked, and their own protector activates. So they, your parts come out, and their parts come out, right? De-escalation becomes a protector-to-protector battle. So people think they're arguing about the dishwasher, who's late, or the tone of voice, but they're actually saying, do I matter to you? Do you see me? Am I safe with you? Are you on my side? This moves the argument out of the rational mind and to emotional attachment, alarm, and defensive parts. Right? This is really important. So people always think they're arguing about, what is, the dishes. They're not arguing about the dishes, right? You have to look at what they're feeling underneath, right? And we did a lot of that in internal family systems. It applies here as well. Okay. So the emotional engine underneath, the practical stuff that happens in intimate relationships. Now, insecure attachment is known as the relationship killer. Okay? So insecure attachment, so there's various types of insecure attachment, the avoidant, anxious, and disorganized, right? Can make relationships difficult because they are strategies for surviving emotional threat. They're strategies for surviving emotional threat, not for mutual recognition. When someone has insecure attachment, what happens? So closeness can feel unsafe, right? That happens with me. Like I'm avoidant, and you start to feel close because you don't trust, right? You start to feel close, like, oh, I'm opening myself up, right? I'm going to be vulnerable. I can't do this. I can't make myself vulnerable, so I better withdraw. Okay, so closeness can feel unsafe, leading to withdrawal. That's what avoidant people do. Shut down. That's what avoidant people do, or defensiveness. So that's the first thing. This is why insecure attachment can be a relationship killer. Second thing, distance can also feel unsafe, right? And that happens more with anxious people, but if you're disorganized, both closeness and distance feel unsafe to you. So it's a double whammy. So distance can feel unsafe, leading to clinging, protest, anger, or control. As a result of their attachment styles, their insecure attachment, partners often misread each other's intentions, react from fear rather than trust, escalate or disengage instead of repairing, and trigger each other's old, unhealed expectations about closeness. Okay, so a lot of what happens in relationships can be understood if you understand your attachment style. Okay? That, what you're doing, you're trying to feel safe, right? You're not trying to repair the relationship or have closeness. You're just trying to feel safe, right? So I think attachment really informs. So a lot of the couple therapies, I think that the ones that are really helpful do focus on attachment a lot and partners' attachment styles. In short, two nervous systems organized around self-protection rather than secure connection can easily get locked into cycles that feel confusing, exhausting, and painful, especially when both people deeply want the relationship to work. And see, like, this is the importance. This stuff is, we've put words to it now, right? But this stuff is unconscious. Like, we're not educated about this stuff. And this stuff is happening in your relationships. And it's so frustrating because you can't put words to it. You don't know what's happening. right? You just feel it. And that's why it's so confusing and so discouraging, because you keep falling into the same holes. And it's like, you don't understand them until you do, a course like this and you begin to understand. You still feel it. So understanding it does not undo what you're feeling, but it's a first step. Undoing what you're feeling involves then IFS work, right? To get to know the parts that are being activated, the exiles, the protectors, etc. Okay. So, do you guys need to stand up for a second just to stretch your legs, or? Yeah, okay, let's stand up because this is going to be like a marathon today.
You know, let's go to the bathroom. So.
No going to the bathroom. Okay, we'll take 1 minute. This is not our official break. It's just a 7-inning stretch.
Would be music.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the 7th.
You can lead us.
Yeah, right. That would empty the room.
Ah, okay. We'll give it a minute. We'll do a bigger break at 2-hour mark, but every hour we'll probably get a couple, just to stand up. Yeah, we can do the way.
Everybody cheer for the Montreal Victoire tonight.
What's the
Ottawa
what's the
Charge,
Montreal Big Bar?
WHL.
I'm a Montreal fan.
Montreal Victoire is the professional women's hockey league. They can win the Walter Cup tonight.
What's the Walter
Yeah,
Cup? Is that like
The
the
Stanley
Cup?
Cup for women's.
Oh, cool.
I was at the game on Monday night.
Oh, nice. So it's Ottawa against Montreal?
Yeah, it's an all Canadian,
Wow.
which is really
How
cool.
many teams are there?
This year there was 8.
8, yeah.
Next year there'll be 12.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
So.
All right, yeah. Shall we, are you guys ready to start again? Okay, no, yeah. Okay. All righty. So, let's review, we've talked about this a little bit before, but let's review how attachment might affect relationships, okay? So, early attachment patterns shape later life relationships. Now, this is something we've talked about. Early attachment patterns, what happens, and early attachment patterns are with your caregivers, right? With your early caregivers. That's what shapes them. But then they affect later life relationships a lot, right? So attachment is the template the nervous system builds in early life for answering 3 questions. So this is your nervous system trying to answer these 3 questions. Am I safe? Are others reliable? What do I need to do to stay connected? Right? So those are the 3 questions your nervous system is trying to answer, in attachment. Am I safe? Are others reliable? What do I need to do to stay connected? These early lessons become implicit operating systems. They show up later in adulthood as how we see connection, how we handle conflict, how we regulate emotions with another, and what we expect from love, what we fear in intimacy, and how we respond to unmet needs. So you can see how early relationships have such an impact on your later life intimate relationships. So attachment patterns are not fixed traits. They are survival strategies learned early that continue only until new experiences or healing provide better options. And when we talked about attachment, we saw that, some people do, their early attachment styles continue through life. But you know, we talked about one of the things shaping personality is how you process stuff, right? It's processing. It's what you do. And so your attachment styles can change, right? You can become earned secure. Or you might have been secure to begin with, and you can become earned insecure, right? Depending on what happens to you, depending how you process stuff, therapy, what you learn, etc. Okay. So how attachment shapes later relationship behaviors. People with different attachment styles differ in how quickly they trust, how much closeness feels comfortable, how they express needs, how they handle conflict, how they respond to absence or silence, how they interpret other people's motives, how they regulate emotion with another person. Attachment patterns are not good or bad. They're about the strategies the nervous system learned to stay safe, which you then bring to your relationships, right? So it's so important to take this into account. Okay, this is a little bit of a review, right? Because we did cover attachment. So this is adult attachment patterns, a brief review. So secure attachment, the core belief in people are securely attached, I'm lovable and others are dependable. Okay? Aren't you lucky if you believe that? Right? I'm lovable and others are dependable. Characteristics of secure attachment, you're comfortable with closeness, but you're also comfortable with autonomy, right? You're good with both. Securely attached people communicate directly, they repair conflict effectively, and they expect relationships to be safe and stable. Okay, and then you have anxious or preoccupied attachment. The core belief is others may leave, I must stay close, right? Characteristics of anxious attachment, heightened fear of abandonment, seeks reassurance, sensitive to emotional shifts, may protest distance or conflict, right? Then you have avoidant or dismissing attachment, and the core belief for people with avoidant or dismissing attachment, others are unreliable, I must rely on myself, right? Characteristics are they value independence, they're uncomfortable with vulnerability, they withdraw in conflict, and emotions feel overwhelming or shameful. All right. And then finally, disorganized or fearful avoidant attachment. Core belief is I want closeness, but closeness is dangerous. So that's a real bind, right? You're not good with either. And characteristics of disorganized or fearful avoidant attachment, rapid shifts between pursuing the other person, and then when you get too close, distancing, difficulty regulating emotions, fears both abandonment and intimacy. You can imagine that's the worst kind of attachment to have, right? Because you're not good with either one. And that's often rooted in developmental trauma. Okay. So having said that, because we talked about what factors, right? And attachment was one of the factors that affects quality of relationships. So let's look at attachment issues in intimate relationships, because this is like a major one. The other ones are important as well, but attachment is so important, right? And attachment is so important because, see, if you have secure attachment, you probably learned a lot of the other factors. You probably learned effective communication. So secure attachment, if you have securely attached parents, the other factors came along with it. So they probably knew how to emotionally regulate. They probably knew how to communicate, right? They probably knew a lot of the other factors, right? So if you have secure attachment, comes with a whole package of other skills that are going to be very beneficial in relationships. So that's why it's so key. And when we talked about how trust is fundamental, right? But secure attachment is about trust. Right? So this is why attachment is so core to the quality of relationships. All right. Right, so I'm going to just go over quickly. Most common relationship combinations, because people each come into a relationship with their own attachment styles. Okay, what happens in these different relationship styles that are coming together, right? So these are the most common combinations. You can imagine there's only like, if you have 4 different attachment styles, you know, secure, anxious, avoidant, and disorganized, there's only like so many combinations, right? So let's look at some of the combinations. Let's start with somebody who's anxious, right? And with somebody who's avoidant. That's very common. So somebody who's anxious, they seek closeness because they don't feel good with autonomy. So they're seeking closeness, right? And somebody who's avoidant, they prefer distance, right? And people, anxious and avoidant is very classical. Anxious people and avoidant people often end up together. I'm not sure exactly why, but it's a common combination. So this is the classical pursuer-distancer dynamic. Okay? And it's interesting because I think even if you're not, so like in my relationship, I'm definitely more avoidant, and my wife is definitely more anxious, right? But like I would say, for me, I was kind of more pathologically avoidant, right? I was kind of like more an outlier. My wife was like, I don't know if she was like, I think she was like somewhat secure. But if you're with an avoidant person, you're going to become anxious, right? Because this person is seeking to distance themselves. And even if you're secure, if you're with somebody who's like always distancing themselves, you kind of go, what the fuck? You know, it's like, why are you avoiding me? Right? So being with an avoidant person can turn somebody who's like relatively secure into somebody who's more anxious. Does that make sense to people? Okay. By the same token, the other thing can happen. So if you have like a person who's more anxious, that more anxious person ends up with a person who's like relatively secure, right? But if this person is very anxious, like always seeking closeness, that relatively secure person is going to go more avoidant because you kind of go, oh, you know, this is like too much, right? So your mutual styles can shape the other person's styles a little bit. Okay, makes sense. We'll take questions after the second hour, okay, and we'll stop and take questions before our break. So this is most common dysfunctional pairing, anxious and avoidant. How it works: the anxious partner seeks closeness when distressed. The avoidant partner withdraws to feel safe. So this creates a looping cycle. Anxious partner moves closer, because that's what anxious people do. Then the avoidant partner feels overwhelmed. The avoidant partner pulls away. The anxious partner feels abandoned, right? Because they're seeking closeness, so they're pursuing even more. And then the anxious moves closer again, more intensely, right? And you get that vicious cycle, right? You can see how that works. The emotional tone is frustration, confusion, longing, misattunement. One nervous system is hyperactivated, one is shut down. Okay, so the anxious person is hyperactivated, right? And often they come across as, why are you so out of control? And the avoidant person is like shut down. It's like, oh, and then they kind of, oh, I'm so controlled, I'm so like calm, but it's not calm, right? It's kind of frozen, right? Not calm. Right? So this often recapitulates childhood patterns almost perfectly. Okay? So that's anxious and avoidant. That's the most common one. Another combination you can imagine is you have anxious. So two people who need reassurance and closeness. And this is not, we're not judging people here, not saying this is a bad thing. We're saying these are attachment patterns that are explained by how you grew up, right? So this is also called the two storm-driven ships. Both partners fear abandonment, escalate quickly, struggle with emotional regulation. Interactions feel intense, dramatic, and often exhausting. The emotional tone is passion plus volatility. Common outcome is short, intense relationships or chronic conflict. Right? Yeah, so those, because people are looking for the other person to meet their emotional needs. And the more you're trying to express, you're not meeting my emotional needs. The other person's saying the same thing, you're not meeting my emotional needs. Then the other person, you're not meeting my emotional needs, so you go back and forth. Nobody's meeting anybody's emotional needs. So they're kind of like two ships seeking reassurance, but the other person can't give, right? They're kind of only feeling their absence, what they're missing. So it's like a escalation, right? Then you have avoidant and avoidant. And this is, if you think about the harbor metaphor, these are two harbors with high walls, right? So both partners value independence, avoid emotional depth, they may live parallel lives, okay? Interactions are calm, but emotionally flat. The emotional tone is peaceful distance. Common outcome is low conflict, but low intimacy. And people become roommates rather than lovers. And to a person who's avoidant, right, it's kind of like, this is like, oh, I can kind of go for that. But you end up feeling very isolated, right? Because there's no intimacy, right? You're both avoidant. Don't experience much connection at all. All right. Then you get secure and anxious. So we're going to get into like what happens if you have one secure person in this relationship. So the secure partner provides reassurance, models healthy communication, doesn't shame neediness. Over time, the anxious partner becomes less preoccupied. This is, in my career as a psychiatrist, I've come across quite a number of people who had very anxious, mostly anxious. See, avoidant people don't come for therapy a lot. They avoid therapy, right? Anxious people come, people with disorganized attachment come. But I've had a lot of people with anxious or disorganized attachment that I've known for like over 30 years now. I've been in Stratford for about 30 years. And they actually have a very secure partner, right? And I'm just like, because I've followed these people for a long time, I'm just kind of in awe of how these secure partners, first of all, how they ended up, because you kind of seek out familiarity, so you seek out relationships like you have in childhood. So people who have insecure attachment often end up with other insecure partners. But if you end up with a secure partner, that's brilliant. And what's interesting is that, sometimes like I follow people for a long time and they kind of go, oh, thank you. Like you've really kind of helped. And I'm going, I didn't do anything. It was like your partner, right? I just saw you every once in a while, but you're healing, this is like earned secure. And you see, I mean, it's kind of one of the most healing things you can experience is being with a secure person, with a truly secure person, right? Or at least somebody who's more secure than you are, right? Because you can be a little bit anxious, but be closer to secure. You can be like very avoidant, you're further from secure. But if you're like a person who's very avoidant with somebody who's like mildly anxious, that's still healing. Does that make sense? The closer they are to secure, that's going to be a benefit for the more distant from secure partner. That makes sense to people? Yeah, okay. So you got the secure and anxious. All right, we've got a few more stops to go through. Okay, then secure and avoidant. So the secure partner respects autonomy, invites emotional connection gently, doesn't pursue when the avoidant withdraws. Over time, the avoidant partner often becomes more open and expressive. Okay, the emotional tone is gentle expansion. The outcome, avoidant partner becomes more comfortable with intimacy. Okay, so that's me. I become a bit more comfortable with intimacy. Still kind of like, only so much, but it's better, right? And then you have secure, which is like, oh my God, it's heaven. That's like the best. It's the rarest, but most stable combination. Interactions are open communication, rapid repair, balanced closeness, and independence, mutual regulation. The emotional tone is resilient, warm, and collaborative. It's like, I never see people like that. Television, yes. Yeah. Okay. Now let's just, because what we haven't talked about is we haven't talked about disorganized yet. So let's talk about disorganized. So disorganized with any other style, whether it be anxious, avoidant, or disorganized. This pattern is the most challenging because the person's inner template is contradictory. Emotional tone is intense, confusing, unpredictable. So if you have a disorganized person and an anxious person, okay, disorganized with anxious, both fear abandonment, both dysregulate, and there's a lot of emotional volatility. Right? If you have disorganized and avoidant, right? Disorganized partner triggers avoidant withdrawal, right? Because avoidant, they often withdraw. That's what they do. Avoidant withdrawal triggers disorganized fear. Both feel unsafe, right? What if you have disorganized and secure? Secure partner can help regulate, and relationship becomes healing if trauma is processed. Okay. All right. So talk about some common intimate relationship conflict patterns. There are many patterns of conflict in intimate relationships. Which do you think apply to you? Right? So now we looked at styles, attachment styles, how they affect, but these are patterns. And we've mentioned some of these before. So the pursuer withdrawal cycle is attachment based. That's when you've got the anxious and the avoidant person. Okay, so one partner pursues, the other withdraws. So these are, when you think about your relationships, think about which of these patterns, right, might be in your relationship. Both believe the other is the problem. Okay, that's like common in relationships. 95% people always think the problem is the other person. Right? 99%, 99. Okay. The pursuer, so the person who's more anxious, escalates, pushes for discussion, raises intensity. The part that's driving them is an anxious young part needing connection, whereas the withdrawer, so the more avoidant person, shuts down, goes quiet, avoids. But the part that's driving them is an avoidant protector, trying to keep everyone safe. Both feel abandoned in different ways. This is the most common argument pattern in adult relationships. Right? I know that one. Give you an example. Sophie wants to talk immediately after an upsetting comment at dinner. Daniel feels overwhelmed, shuts down and says, "Can we not do this right now?" Sophie escalates, interpreting his silence as, "I don't matter." Daniel withdraws further. interpreting her intensity as danger. Both feel abandoned in different ways. Okay, so that's most common. Are you guys hanging in there? No, losing it? No, a little bit. Okay, we'll go a little longer and we'll take our break, okay? Let's go another 15 minutes and then we'll take questions and we'll take our break. Okay, and then we'll do second half after. In the second half, we're gonna have more role play with people here, so it won't be just like a talking head up here. But I'm hoping you're finding this somewhat interesting. Okay. So common argument dynamics. This is the second one. Pursuer, withdrawer, most common one. Second most common one is the content fight that hides a meaning fight. All right. So the couple argues about logistics, the plans, the dishes, the finances, but the actual fight is about meaning. Do you respect me? Are you taking me for granted? Do you believe I'm competent? Is my perspective valid? In IFS terms, the content is the protector's language. The meaning comes from the exile's emotional need. I'll give you an example. Okay, and this is so common, like almost, this is present in most fights, because people think they're fighting about what's happening, the content. And we talked about this earlier, right? But what they're really fighting about is like the emotions underneath that content. This is so important. So an example, Mark and Jenna get into a 40-minute fight about who left the garage door open. On the surface, they're arguing about responsibility, timelines, and who remembers correctly, right? Underneath, Mark feels criticized and incompetent. Jenna feels dismissed and alone with the household load. Their protectors, anger, defensiveness, take over, and they argue facts instead of feelings. Right? So common. Let's look at a few more patterns. So another relationship dynamic or pattern is called symmetrical escalation. Okay, symmetrical escalation is you raise volume, I raise volume. All right, both partners mirror each other's escalation. One criticizes, then the other counters with a bigger criticism. One yells, and then the other yells louder. One defensively justifies, then the other fact corrects more aggressively. All right, it becomes a competition of protectors, each trying to restore dignity, control, and safety. So if you have an avoidant person, that doesn't happen, right? If you have like 2 anxious people, like that's more likely to happen, right? So give you an example. Rita raises her voice in frustration after feeling unheard. Andre raises his voice in response. Why are you yelling? Rita yells louder. I'm yelling because you don't listen. Soon they're both shouting about whose tone is worse. 2 protectors are fighting for dignity and safety. So that's happens more in anxious. Avoidant people, like they'd be out of there a long time ago. So another dynamic or pattern in arguments, and just to invite you to kind of see which ones apply to. Another dynamic or pattern is scorekeeping and historical arguments. How common is that? Right, that's like super common. So triggered by something small in the present, but suddenly the argument is about you always. Okay, this drives my wife crazy, and I've learned after 40 years to not like say you always, because that's so bad, right? So now I'm very careful. Like, you sometimes, and even that like doesn't go very well. So like now I'm working on, well, occasionally, not that often, right? Okay, that goes better, but still, okay. Triggered by something small in the present, but suddenly the argument's about you always. Remember last year when this is just like the time this happens when old injuries, exiles, get activated and spill into the current moment. For example, Tom forgets to text that you'll be late. His partner, Maya, becomes deeply upset and brings up 3 past times when she felt abandoned. Tom defends himself with explanations from those earlier events. The present argument collapses underneath years of unprocessed pain. So that's also called the kitchen sink argument, which is like you just put everything in the kitchen sink, right? Just bring everything from the past.
Everything's sticky.
Yeah. So, and then triangulating a third element. The couple drags in the third factor: kids, finances, work, ex-partners, parents. Instead of talking about the vulnerable feelings between them, this protects them from intimacy, but traps them in interpersonal conflict. For example, when tension rises between Maria and John, Maria keeps turning to their teenage daughter for support. Tell your father I'm not being unreasonable. The daughter becomes a third point in their triangle, temporarily stabilizing the tension, but increasing long-term conflict and confusion. Okay. Can we go through a few more? Still good with this? Right. You know, the neat thing about this is, so these, you think, it kind of makes sense because this is like research done by family therapists and stuff that have looked at these patterns. And, we just do this stuff. But then when you see it in print and you kind of go, oh, yeah, that's the thing. It gives you a little bit of power. Another dynamic or pattern is the debater versus emotionalizer dynamic. One partner goes intellectual and logical while the other expresses emotion. Okay, that's very common, again, in anxious and avoidant, right? The intellectualizer uses facts, logic, correction, meant to bring control. The emotionalizer expresses hurt, overwhelm, fear, meant to bring closeness. Each feels invalidated by the other's style. For example, during an argument about finances, Alex responds with logic, spreadsheets, and facts. Their partner, Sam, is speaking from hurt and overwhelm. I feel scared when money gets tight. Alex keeps debating. Sam feels dismissed. They are in two different modes: rational debate versus emotional expression. This is very common in cross-attachment relationships, anxious plus dismissing, so anxious plus avoidant, right? Okay, another pattern is we're both right, but in different ways, conflict. Each partner is telling their truth from different emotional time zones. One speaks from the present. You're yelling right now. The other speaks from the past. I'm reacting because you dismissed me earlier. Both are correct, but they're not answering the same question. For example, Jamie says, we need more time together to stay close. Taylor says, I need more time alone to recharge. Both perspectives are true and valid, one rooted in connection needs, the other in autonomy needs, but they appear contradictory until both truths are acknowledged. That makes sense, right? All right. And I think we're coming to the end there. Yeah, that's the last one. So, and the last dynamic or pattern, that's not to say there's not other patterns, but these are the most common ones, is protest versus protest. Two hurt parts yelling, see my pain. Both partners are essentially saying, see my hurt, validate me first. No, you hurt me more. Both are protesting disconnection rather than causing it. Example, when one partner pulls away even slightly, both escalate. If Lee feels ignored, they raise their voice. Jordan reacts to that by pressing even harder. No, you're not listening. Instead of protest, withdrawal, it becomes protest, protest. Two nervous systems in alarm, each demanding connection by communicating threat. Okay, so just to summarize, most couples' arguments aren't about facts. They're not about who did dishes, right? Or who took out the garbage. They're about feelings. Protectors get activated, and the couple stops being able to hear each other from a calm, connected self. Once hurt, parts take over. They protect themselves with anger, withdrawal, logic, or criticism, and these protective strategies clash. What looks like a disagreement is usually two wounded parts trying to be seen. Okay, let me do these because this is really fast, and then we'll stop. And do you want to do questions before the break or after the break? Any preference? After? Okay.
After, because then we can read
Okay.
it.
Put your hands up if you want after. Let's do a vote here. After, so we've got four afters. Before? One. Okay, sorry. The afters have it. What?
Can't remember long enough.
Okay.
Write it down.
All right, this is another way of looking at, this is from an activation perspective. So common relationship activation patterns, fight, that's anxious, right? Fawn fight, right? Fight flight, that's anxious avoidant. Fight freeze. Okay. So let's take a 10-minute break. We'll come back at 10 to 11, okay? And we'll take questions at that. What's that? And you can see my slides, right?
Yes, I can.
Perfect, okay. So, you'll hear about different kinds of relationships. There's names that are given in the literature. I just want to go over some of those. This overlaps a little bit what we've talked about before. But there's healthy and less healthy relationship types. So these are the healthy and less healthy relationship types. So one way is to think of every relationship as a harbor, right? And each person is a ship navigating the waters of life. A harbor can offer safety, nourishment, and rest, or it can be difficult to enter, unpredictable, or even dangerous. Different relationship styles create different types of harbors for you. So let's start with the ideal harbor, which is a secure relationship. Secure relationship is one in which both people feel safe, seen, valued, and soothed. In a secure relationship, people are emotionally responsive and consistent. Conflicts are repaired rather than avoided. Each person can be independent and connected, and there is high trust and low drama. This mirrors secure attachment. Safe harbor that steadies both partners. So secure harbor, the harbor is well lit, calm, predictable, and welcoming. The ship knows it can enter in storms and rest without fear. So an example, Maria and Daniel argue sometimes, but they always come back together to repair. When Maria feels overwhelmed, she reaches out. Daniel responds warmly. Daniel trusts that Maria won't leave when things get hard. Both can sail into life confidently, knowing there's a safe place to return. All right. So another type of healthy relationship is an interdependent relationship. And it doesn't mean, it's because a secure relationship can also be interdependent, right? These are just different words we use for relationships. So yeah, definitely secure relationship can be interdependent, but an interdependent relationship involves two autonomous individuals who choose mutual reliance. In an interdependent relationship, there's the healthy balance of closeness and independence, support for the growth of both people and for each partner's own life and identity. So if you come back to the harbor metaphor, an interdependent harbor, two sturdy docks connected by a strong bridge, ships come and go freely, supported but not confined. Clinical example, Aisha and Tom each have rich independent lives, friends, hobbies, careers. They rely on one another, but don't collapse into one another. When stress hits, they lean in, but they never lose themselves. Okay, so another healthy type of relationship, again, can be coexist with the previous two that I mentioned, is supportive and nurturing relationships. They enhance well-being, resilience, and meaning. They encourage each person's goals. They provide warmth, predictable emotional environments, good communication, shared values. So supportive and nurtured harbor is a harbor with repair crews, replenishing stations, and steady lighthouses. It strengthens ships for the journey. So clinical example, after losing his job, Evan leans on his partner who listens, validates, and encourages him. Their communication feels like gentle tides, responsive and attuned. Okay, so let's get into toxic relationships, right? Or sorry, unhealthy relationship types. So what is a toxic relationship? Toxic relationships consistently damage well-being. They feature manipulation, instability, volatility, criticism, contempt, gaslighting, and emotional or physical harm. In these relationships, there is no psychological safety. They're often rooted in insecure attachment, trauma, or personality issues. So what does a toxic harbor look like? Toxic harbor looks calm from afar, but close up is full of hidden rocks, sudden storms, and unstable docks. Clinical example, Sarah never knows which version of her partner she's coming home to, warm or raging. Even when things are calm, she prepares for the next explosion. Her nervous system is always on alert. Okay. Another unhealthy type of relationship is what are called codependent relationships. So codependent relationships are those where self-worth, identity, or stability depend on the other person. In these relationships, one or both partners overfunctions, excessively caretakes or rescues, has poor boundaries and identity fusion. I don't know who I am without you. Interdependence equals two whole people connected. Codependence, two incomplete selves fused. So what does a codependent harbor look like? The docks are fused together. If one ship tries to leave, everything shakes. An example, Mark can't make decisions without checking with Lily. Lily feels responsible for Mark's emotional state and exhausts herself managing it. Both are afraid that if they separate even briefly, everything will fall apart. Okay. This is another type that you'll hear often mentioned is an enmeshed relationship. So an enmeshed relationship is one with diffused boundaries. There's often over-involvement in each other's emotions and lack of individuality. Decisions are made as a merged unit, autonomy is threatening, and the relationship can feel suffocating. So in a meshed harbor, there are no boundaries. The harbors have merged into one tangled waterway. Ships can't move freely. Leaving feels like betrayal. An example, a mother and adult daughter who talk 10 times a day, share every detail, and panic when the other is unavailable. Autonomy feels dangerous. This is something people have brought up a lot. A narcissistic or exploitative relationship is where one person uses the other to regulate their self-esteem. Needs are highly one-sided, and there is lack of empathy and idealization and evaluation cycle, and the partner becomes an appliance for validation. So what does a narcissistic and exploitative harbor look like? One harbor looks beautiful, but only serve the needs of its own lighthouse. Ships are welcome only if they shine back admiration. So clinical example, Chris feels adored at first, then slowly devalued. His partner expects constant praise and becomes cold or critical when he has needs of his own. All right. Couple more types of relationship. This is another one that you hear a lot, which is a trauma-bonded relationship, is one that is reinforced by cycles of abuse and intermittent reward. There are often high highs and low lows. Relief moments feel like love. The abused partner feels unable to leave, and their nervous system becomes conditioned to unpredictability. This is common in childhood trauma reenactments. So what does a trauma-bonded harbor look like? The harbor alternates between storms and sudden moments of calm. The unpredictability creates a powerful psychological tether. A clinical example, Anna's partner cycles between cruel outbursts and tearful apologies. The relief she feels during the apologies is so profound that she stays, even while being harmed. Okay? Avoidant relationships are marked by emotional distance and self-protection. Intimacy feels overwhelming. There is high independence, low vulnerability, and withdrawing or shutting down during conflicts. Avoidant harbor, the harbor is almost impossible to enter, high walls, few docks, and no visible lighthouse. Clinical example, when Leo's partner gets emotional, he shuts down, withdraws, or works long hours. He wants connection, but feels safest alone. And I think we're coming to the end. I'm just going to do this last one, and we're going to skip over the next ones. Anxious relationships are fueled by fear of abandonment. They often involve pursuing, claiming, checking, hyper-focus on partners' emotional shifts, high sensitivity to rejection, and quick escalation of conflicts. What does an anxious harbor look like? The harbor is there, but the entrance is narrow and difficult. Ships worry they won't be let in during storms, so they circle anxiously. Clinical example, Jasmine texts repeatedly when her partner is quiet. She fears abandonment so strongly that small delays feel like storms. Okay, let's skip over those and those, but they're more, names that we use for relationships. All right, so this whole bunch, I invite you to go to the website and look at those. So in summary, relationships vary widely from securely and supported to toxic and traumatic. Some relationships help us feel safe and whole, others activate our old wounds. Many patterns mirror attachment styles. Anxious relationships cling, avoidant relationships distance, and disorganized relationships both pull and push. Codependent relationships fuse identity, while interdependent relationships support growth. Recognizing these patterns helps us understand what kind of a relational harbor we built internally and how we can begin to build a safer one. Every relationship is like a harbor. Some are safe, stable, and welcoming. Others are difficult to enter, dangerous, unpredictable, or fused without boundaries. Our attachment histories shape the kinds of harbors we build and the storms we generate. Healing is possible. We can learn to repair broken docks, widen the entrance, strengthen the lighthouse, and become a harbor where others feel safe to anchor. All right. All right, having said all of that, this is a question people ask a lot. So, can my relationship be repaired? And there's a number of things, so in answering that question, can your relationship be repaired? There's a number of things that kind of make it more likely that your relationship can be repaired. And I'll just go over those. Okay, so willingness to self-reflect. Partners can identify their own emotional reactions and parts rather than only pointing at the partner's faults. Okay, so able to kind of reflect on what's your stuff. They can say things like, I know I shut down when I'm overwhelmed, rather than you make me shut down. Why does this help? It shifts dynamics from blame to curiosity, opens the door to internal family systems and other attachment-based work. That's one thing that indicators that repair is possible. So if you have that in your relationship, the other thing is capacity for emotional regulation. And you already know what that is. So it's the ability to stay within the window of tolerance long enough to work through conflict. Even modest improvements, pausing, grounding, breath work, enhance the couple's ability to communicate. Why does this help? Couples therapy becomes possible when partners can stay present rather than collapse into fight, flight, or freeze. Okay. Another thing that is an indicator that relationship can be repaired is mutual goodwill. So basic assumption that the partner is not the enemy. There's still warmth, affection, and at least a desire to repair. Why does this help? Preserved. Okay, that's a typo. Preserved. Is that how you spell it? Preserved. No, that's not how you spell it. Preserved. Is that how you spell it? Okay. Anyways, preserved. Preserved goodwill allows partners to interpret each other's behaviors less catastrophically. Okay. Another indicator that repair might be possible, ability to hold two realities at once. Couples who can tolerate both and. I was hurt and I know you didn't intend harm. Why does this help? Reduces polarization, makes empathy possible. Other indicators that repair is possible, insight into the role of early attachment. So if we know that we have an attachment disorder or we have attachment issues, when partners understand that current reactivity often comes from younger parts, not from malice. Why it helps? Depathologizes both partners, activates compassion, opens space for healing, right? Another factor or indicator that repair is possible, accountability and willingness to repair. The ability to say, I see what I did. I'm sorry. I want to do this differently. Why it helps? Repair is the single strongest predictor of relationship stability. Another indicator, realistic expectations, understanding that therapy is not fast and that healing requires practice. Why it helps? Prevents disappointment, impatience spiral that leads to dropout or blame. And finally, supportive context, low external stress, so not a lot of financial, medical, or parenting burdens. Why it helps? there's more bandwidth for emotional work rather than, your bandwidth being absorbed by these other things. Okay, so we looked at indicators that tell you that repair is possible in your relationship. What are some of the indicators that say that repair is less likely, right? So high emotional reactivity and poor regulation. When either partner is routinely outside the window of tolerance, rage, panic, disconnection, why it hinders, there's no self-to-self communication possible, only parts-to-parts combat. Blame without self-reflection. If you would just change, we'd be fine. Why it hinders, externalizing the problem, removes agency, therapy becomes a courtroom. Okay, so blame others as opposed to self-reflecting on your role. Criticism, contempt, and stonewalling. We're going to talk about John Gottman in a minute, but this is known as Gottman's 4 horsemen: criticism, contempt, and stonewalling. And there's another one because it's 4 horsemen. I'm missing one there. These are the stronger predictors for separation. That's Gottman's work. Why it hinders, they erode goodwill, break down attachment safety, and activate protectors in both partners. And chronic avoidance, refusal to engage emotionally, avoiding vulnerability or intellectualizing every conflict. Why it hinders, prevents deeper attachment, repair, and blocks the partner from ever reaching the underlying wounds. Okay, just a few more indicators that repair is less likely in your relationship. So if there's trauma with no individual work, right? When trauma activation dominates the couple's dynamic, but each partner refuses or lacks access to individual therapy. Why it hinders, partners become each other's triggers, and the relationship becomes an emotional minefield. Another one, asymmetrical motivation. One partner wants to change, the other is ambivalent or resistant. Why it hinders, creates a pursue-at-distance dynamic that therapy amplifies rather than resolves. Another one's affairs or ongoing boundary violations without repair, especially if there is continued secrecy or minimization. Why it hinders, no attachment security can be rebuilt on an unstable foundation. And finally, addictions or severe untreated mental illness. Why it hinders, these overwhelm the relational system. Stabilization must come first. Okay. So I mentioned this earlier. So this is the work of John Gottman. I'm going to get into a little bit more into John Gottman in a second. He's a couples therapist. So John Gottman's 4 horsemen of the relationship apocalypse are 4 communication patterns that reliably predict a relationship breakdown when they become habitual. So Gottman is famous for predicting people are going to separate, right? He has like a 90% accuracy. They describe how conflict is handled, not whether conflict exists, right? And they are powerful because they escalate negativity, erode trust, and block repair. So what are the Gottman's 4 horsemen? So one is criticism. Criticism attacks a partner's character or identity rather than addressing a specific behavior. Focuses on who you are instead of what happened. Often uses always or never and invites defensiveness rather than problem solving. Example, turning complaint into a global judgment about the person. So criticism is the first of the 4 horsemen. Contempt expresses disdain, superiority, or disgust, and is the most destructive of the 4. It includes sarcasm, mockery, high-rolling, sneering. Communicates moral or intellectual superiority. Strongly predicts divorce and health problems. Contempt signals that one partner no longer sees the other as an equal. Okay. Another of the 4 horsemen, defensiveness, is self-protection through denial or counterattack. Refusing responsibility, making excuses, blaming the other partner. While it feels protective, defensiveness escalates conflict because it blocks accountability and resolution. And the last of the 4 horsemen is stonewalling. So it occurs when one partner withdraws from interaction entirely. Emotional shutdown, silence, minimal responses, avoidance during conflict. It often appears after prolonged exposure to criticism or contempt and reflects physiological overwhelm rather than indifference. So the 4 patterns tend to form a destructive cycle. Criticism triggers defensiveness. Defensiveness fuels contempt. Contempt leads to emotional withdrawal. Stonewalling deepens this connection. Without repair, the cycle becomes self-reinforcing and increasingly rigid over time. Gottman's work shows that relationship failure is rarely about incompatibility or conflict frequency. It is about how partners communicate under stress. The horsemen are not occasional mistakes. They are repeated interactional patterns that signal a breakdown in mutual respect, safety, and emotional regulation. Recognizing them early allows couples to replace them with healthier alternatives and restore cooperation rather than escalation. Okay, this is a summary. So key prognostic predictors of good versus bad outcomes in intimate relationships. So this is a synthesis from emotionally focused therapy, internal family systems informed relational work, Gottman research, and trauma and attachment literature. So best predictors of good outcome, presence of at least one secure enough internal working model, one partner with some stable attachment capacity, mutual willingness to soften protectors and explore younger parts, early signs of successful de-escalation, fewer blow-ups or shutdowns, emotional accessibility and responsiveness, the couple's ability to repair within the session even once, being able to see each other with fresh eyes after parts work. And these are best predictors of poor outcome, dominance of contempt, and Gottman says it predicts dissolution of the relationship to 93% accuracy, unwillingness to take responsibility or examine one's own parts, couples who reenact trauma without capacity for regulation, persistent parallel lives, absence rather than conflict, partners who fundamentally dislike each other, one partner feeling unsafe, not emotionally unsafe only, but physically or coercively unsafe. Okay, I'm going to skip over that, but invite you to take a look at it. So does the repair of relationship holes require different skills, tools, or strategies than the ones we've learned so far in the course? So what those pictures reflect is, we talked about falling into holes ourselves, right? That's the picture on the left. Now we're looking at collective holes and how we fall into holes together. So relationships include those with partners, parents, children, other relatives, friends, exes, co-workers, bosses, therapists, medical professionals, etc. Relationship holes are an important subset of all the holes in the sidewalk we fall into. So we fall into a lot of holes, but large number of holes we fall into are interpersonal holes. We use the same tools, skills, and strategies, but there are some special considerations when you're doing interpersonal work, right? That's what we're going to explore a little bit. Okay. So this is something that, like I often, when I see people who are in very difficult relationships, I often ask them, so what are your options? You're in a difficult relationship. What options do you have in this relationship? And as far as I can tell, there's 4 options. And if somebody could come up with other ones, I kind of think that's great. But so far, and I always ask this question, so far I see there's 4 options if you're in a difficult relationship. Okay? So the first one is just continue as is. Do nothing. Okay? And that's probably what happens a lot of the time. Just continue the same patterns without any change. Number 2 is leave the relationship. All right. The problem with that, and sometimes that's great. Sometimes that's great for people. The problem with that, having worked with a lot of people that have left relationships, is that they don't feel good in the relationship, but after they leave the relationship, they don't feel good either. Right? Sometimes they kind of want to return to the relationship, but sometimes their problems are different, but they don't feel good either. That says something. Maybe the problem wasn't just the relationship, right? I think a lot of the time, sometimes the problem might be the relationship, a lot of time maybe what, are individual factors that we're bringing into the relationship. And it's easy to blame the relationship. I'm not saying that's all the time. So that's one option is stay the same. The second one is leave the relationship. The third option is repair. Work at improving the relationship by developing better interpersonal regulation skills and wise mind or self. And the fourth is the most popular, but the most unrealistic option. Okay? This never happens. I've yet to see this happen, but it's like what everybody wants, is wishing or hoping the other person would and pressuring them to change. And that's what everybody does. Like, I see people and say, oh, why can't, my partner change? If only my partner changed. And I've never seen that happen. I don't know, like, have you guys seen that happen? No? Maybe like once, right? But it's rare. So each option, whether it's 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we'll take questions again at the end. If you have any other options, like, love to hear. There might be another option if you're in a difficult relationship. I think so far those cover it. So each option has advantages and disadvantages, and you have to consider these carefully. Now, the other thing is that, and this is interesting, is that even if you're like in a relatively healthy relationship, there's going to be parts of you that want to leave that relationship. Right? So different parts of you are going to want different things. And this is why sometimes when people end up leaving, right? And I talk about this with people. When they're together with somebody, the parts of them that want to leave dominate, right? And they're going, really want to leave. And then they leave, and then the parts of them that want to be back with the person again dominate, right? And sometimes people go through very numerous cycles of that, right? And they don't realize that it's like different parts of them that are being activated, right? And so if you know about that, you can avoid a lot of suffering, right? That different parts of you, even in a relatively healthy relationship, right? Sometimes there are parts of you that just like, it'd be so nice to be with somebody else, right? And that's not a bad thing, provided that those parts, you don't become blended with those parts, and those parts take over, and that these are parts, and that's okay, right? So people often stay together or continue a relationship even if they are not attracted to or like each other. Some of the reasons for this include habits, social expectations and pressures, the kids' sense of duty, fear of the other person, fawning, finances, fear of change, their vows, etc. As Socrates taught us, it's possible to be meaningful, happy, even if our life is spent close to a difficult person. Such a relationship may even provide fuel for growth. So I think I told you this before, but Socrates was married to a really difficult person. And his students were always asking, why are you still with her? And she said, well, because this proves my mettle as a philosopher. Because if I can kind of emotionally regulate and be okay with, somebody so difficult, then, all is good. It really takes work. Anyways, that's what people say about Socrates, but I don't know if it's true. All right. So how do you weigh staying, leaving, staying and working towards change, or for maintaining the status quo? And this is not going to be, these decisions, you're not going to make them rational. Your parts are making these decisions, right? You may think that this is a rational decision you're making, but it's not, it's emotional. Trying to repair a difficult relationship can be a lot of work. How do you decide if you should do the hard work or simply leave the relationship? Okay, so many people cannot make this decision because multiple parts have conflicting agendas. A protector who longs for safety, an exile who's terrified of abandonment, a caretaker who feels responsible for the partner, a hopeful part who believes change is possible, a fearful part who believes leaving is impossible, a rational part who sees the data clearly, a loyal part tied to history, memories, or vows. The goal is not to silence any of these parts, but to identify the part. So this is an opportunity. If you're conflicted about your relationship, okay, that's an opportunity for you to do some AFS work and look at what your parts, different parts, have to say. What are the parts that are weighing in on this relationship and leaving versus staying? So it's a really good opportunity to do it IFS work. So the goal is not to silence any of these parts, but to identify them, hear each part's fears and hopes, unblend enough to let self lead the decision, and a good decision is made from clarity, courage, calm, compassion, and connection, not from fear, guilt, fantasy, or panic. So if you're contemplating leaving a relationship, or if you're struggling, or if you're torn, okay, use the RFS skills that you've learned. Look at it from this perspective. So when people are deciding whether to stay in a difficult relationship or leave, it's important to recognize that two different parts of the mind are involved. The rational mind, this is the part, so that's the rational manager. This is the part of the mind that makes lists, weighs pros and cons, looks at patterns, and evaluates long-term consequences. It's logical, organized, and future-oriented. Okay, so that's the part that most people feel that they're making their decisions from, but I don't think that's actually the part they're making their decisions from, but they feel they're making. They might have a list of pros and cons. But the other thing that dominates is that it's the emotional mind. So when you make these decisions about whether to stay or leave or try to repair or just maintain the status quo, you're doing it from emotional mind. This is the part that feels love, fear, loneliness, hope, shame, longing, and memories. It responds to attachment needs, trauma histories, and the desire for connection. It often pulls us to stay or leave for intensely felt reasons. Neither of these minds is wrong. They simply speak different languages. The checklist we use, the one outlining factors that affect long-term well-being, is a product of rational mind. It helps you step back and see the relationship from a broader perspective: safety, stability, mutual care, emotional health, growth, impact on children, financial realities, and so on. But no one makes relationship decisions on logic alone. We are bonded creatures. Attachment, fear of loss, dreams of the future, trauma triggers, core needs pull from the emotional mind. So the checklist is not meant to make the decision for you. It's meant to support the emergence of wise mind. Ideally, the decision to stay, leave, or change comes from wise mind or self. Wise mind itself is the integration point, the place where rational clarity and emotional truth meet. Wise mind says, my feelings matter and the facts matter. My long-term well-being matters and my attachments matter. I won't make a decision from panic nor from denial, but from grounded presence. The checklist helps because it gives structure and clarity, but the decision comes from a deeper internal place, the place in you that can hold both heart and mind at the same time. Wise mind is not pressured, it's spacious, it allows the truth to rise from within. So this checklist comes from rational mind, but real decisions about love and commitment are emotional decisions. The purpose of the list is not to replace your feelings, it's to support you in finding wise mind. Wise mind integrates both your emotional reasons for staying or leaving and your rational ones. It lets you make a grounded decision that honors both truth and feeling. So this is a checklist, okay, that might help you. And I'm not going to go through all of this, but if you're kind of weighing staying or leaving, do this checklist on your own, right? And rate each item as positive or negative or question mark. You're unsure about it. Okay, so there's a bunch of questions that it asks. For example, safety and stability. I feel physically safe. I feel emotionally safe enough to be vulnerable, etc., right? So a bunch of different questions that you go through, right? Different areas. how you score this is that the more pluses that you have, that you see, working towards change may be viable. Okay, the more pluses you see, working towards change might be a good thing. The more negatives you see, suggests leaving or at least stepping back. That may improve your well-being. Many question marks suggest further exploration, therapy, or temporary stabilization before deciding. Okay, so I invite you to go back and take that if you're struggling with a relationship. Just take that that questionnaire. Okay. Do you guys need 2 minutes to stand up and stretch? No, you're good? Good to go? Okay. So what I just want to briefly, before we go to our role playing, want to just mention, because these are the 3 most popular, but also well-researched, because a lot of couples therapists, but these are the academic, you know, the ones that most respected. So they're John Gottman, Stan Tatkin, and Sue Johnson. They're all renowned couples therapists. And I just want to very briefly highlight for you their thinking and their approaches. All right. So that's what they look like. All right. So let's start with John Gottman, who founded the Gottman Institute. So Gottman studied couples scientifically for decades and is famous for predicting divorce with a 90% accuracy. So couples that came to see him, you kind of like, after you saw them a little bit, you said, okay, this is my guess as to whether they're going to be together or not. Did I leave my drink there? Oh, I guess I finished it. I should have brought another drink. Anyways, okay. So we already talked about this, right? So communication skills. Gottman highlights the importance of soft startups, raising issues gently, versus harsh startups, attacking, which predicts success or failure. Emotional regulation. He identifies the need to avoid flooding, emotional overwhelm during conflict, advocating for self-soothing techniques. Conflict resolution ability. Gottman's 4 horsemen: criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling, damaged relationships. Successful couples replace those with antidotes like appreciation, responsibility, and repair attempts. Trust and safety. Gottman emphasizes that everyday emotional bits, small requests for attention, build or erode trust over time. And novelty and growth. His idea of the love map, deep knowledge of each other's worlds, encourages partners to keep learning about each other. Okay, I'm not going to go over that. So that's some of his kind of small practices that he recommends people do. Okay. And then just very quickly, Stan Tatkin. He has a psychobiological approach to couples therapy. So Tatkin focuses on how our nervous systems, early attachment experiences, and unconscious processes shape relationships. So he says attachment styles, Tatkin bases much of his work on the idea that secure functioning couples actively create safety regardless of their individual attachment histories. Emotional regulation, he emphasizes that partners act as each other's primary regulators. When one is upset, the other helps calm them, and vice versa. Mutual support, Tatkin stresses that couples should operate as a 2-person system rather than as independent competitors. Trust and safety, in Tatkin's view, the core goal is a secure functioning relationship where agreements prioritize the relationship over individual self-interest. External stressors, Tatkin believes couples must form a couple bubble, a protective sphere where the relationship takes priority over external threats and distractions. Okay, skip over that. And then finally, Sue Johnson. And Sue Johnson, her approach is called emotionally focused therapy. So Johnson focuses heavily on emotional connection as the foundation. Attachment styles, her model is directly based on adult attachment theory, all about creating a secure emotional bond. Emotional regulation, helping partners reach for each other in vulnerability rather than withdrawal or attacking is central. Trust and safety, emotional responsiveness. Are you there for me when I need you? Builds strong, resilient trust. And she does a thing called Hold Me Tight Conversations. You can look at that. Okay. So, do you want me to go over that? These are like tiny practices that each one of them recommends. That might be things you can do every day. And you don't have to do all three of them, but if you even do one, you do it regularly, it can be helpful. Okay, so Gottman, he suggests that people do a daily stress reducing conversation. He says, think about 10, 15 minutes. And what is this? It's a short daily check-in about external stressors, such as work, family, and health, not relationship problems. It helps by building friendship and emotional attunement, lowers baseline stress so couples don't misdirect tension at each other. So tiny practice, one partner speaks, the other listens with curiosity, empathy, and validation, no fixing. So, I mean, that seems like pretty easy thing, right? Like 15 minutes a day, but how many of us do that, right? I don't, and yet we all spend tons of time on our phones and stuff. And then Tatkin, tiny practice, he calls it the couple bubble, a shared agreement that the relationship comes first and partners actively protect each other's sense of safety. It helps by creating a secure, predictable we space where both partners feel prioritized. Tiny practice, ask daily, what do you need from me today to feel safe, supported, or not alone? And you can actually, take turns asking that question. And Sue Johnson, hold me tight conversations, micro moments, brief emotionally check-ins that name vulnerability and attachment needs. It helps by turning conflicts and distance into moments of bonding by reaching instead of protecting. Tiny practice, use simple attachment language. I'm feeling overwhelmed and need reassurance, followed by a responsive, caring reply. So these three tiny practices work together. Gottman regulates stress, Tatkin establishes safety and loyalty, and Johnson deepens emotional bonding. Practice briefly but daily, these create a relationship that feels calmer, safer, and more emotionally connected without needing long, heavy conversations. Okay. All right, so now we turn, before we do practice, we turn to you're the one you've been waiting for. So, I mentioned this earlier. I'm just going to tell you a little bit what you're the one you've been waiting for, the approach it recommends. So how do you work in intimate relationships? This is kind of like a little bit of a summary of the book. In his 2008 book, You're the One You've Been Waiting For, Richard Schwartz offers a way of understanding relationships using an IFS perspective. The book focuses on romantic relationships, but its lessons apply to any close relationship. Schwartz argues that most of our relationship struggles aren't really caused by the other person. Okay, I'll repeat that. Most of our relationship struggles, contrary to popular opinion, aren't mostly caused by the other person. Okay, that's what Schwartz says. I'm not the one who's saying that. It's Schwartz. Okay, they come from our own wounded parts being triggered. Okay, and when you think about this, I'm actually pretty convinced of this. Right? For example, if your partner ignores a text, a part of you might panic, not just because of the text, but because a much younger part remembers what it felt like to be rejected or abandoned. Rather than blaming the other person or trying to fix them, Schwartz encourages us to turn inward with curiosity and compassion. Our capital S self can gently connect with these wounded parts and help them heal. When we do this, we stop expecting someone else to rescue us or make us whole. We become, as the title says, the one we've been waiting for. Okay? So the book teaches us to, one, recognize when parts are getting activated, especially in conflict. Two, pause and turn inward with compassion instead of reacting impulsively. 3, listen to parts without judging them or trying to get rid of them. And 4, lead from self, which brings clarity, calm, and connection. So in relationships, this approach helps us stop repeating old patterns. Instead of attacking, withdrawing, or people-pleasing, we can stay present and open. Healing ourselves from the inside out creates room for deeper love and real intimacy, not the kind based on fixing each other, but the kind built on mutual acceptance and understanding. Okay. So in couples, the heart of remediation or intimate relationship therapy is the shift from reacting to understanding. In couples, the heart of remediation Okay, is the shift from reacting to understanding. Okay, that's a big thing in this course. We're moving from reacting to understanding. Protector parts are fast, automatic, and often inherited from early attachment experiences. So this is what they look like. So if you're reacting, which is it's your protectors, right? If you're angry, you're attacking, right? If you withdraw, you're feeling I need to hide. If you're fact correcting, I need control. If you're criticizing, notice my pain. If you're being defensive, protect my dignity, right? And when you move from reacting to understanding, which is like being led by capital S self, this is the shift into curiosity, empathy, and meaning making. And instead of reacting with anger, withdrawal, fact correcting, criticism, or defensiveness, then you start to ask, what part of me just got triggered? What was the deeper message behind what I said? What is my partner actually feeling beneath their reactions? What is this really about? Can I respond instead of react? Okay. So moving from reacting to understanding means slowing down the physiological escalation. Right? So pause, breathe, regulate your nervous system. He started, right at the beginning of the course. We talked about doing this, right? The very first skill that Joan and Nicole talked about. Identifying the protector part that took over. This is my criticized part, child part, not my whole self. Naming the unmet emotional need to feel respected, seen, valued, safe. So that's what the exile carries, right? Turning towards the partner with curiosity rather than defense. Help me understand what hurt here. And repairing the rupture. Empathy, acknowledgement, softening, apologizing where appropriate. So arguments improve not when we solve the content, like who's going to do the dishes, who's going to clean the house, who spent more money, but when we understand the emotion beneath the content, when we move from protector to protector battles to self conversations. Richard Schwartz's central message is simple and powerful. Most of the pain in our intimate relationships come from exiled parts looking to our partners to heal wounds that actually belong to our past. Real intimacy begins when we bring capital S self-leadership into our relationships. We become the ones our own parts have been waiting for. So the core problem, burdened love, Schwartz explained that most couples operate from a form of burdened love, where childhood wounds drive adult patterns. In burdened love, we exile vulnerable parts. Child parts carry shame, fear, loneliness, and worthiness. Other parts take a protector's role over functioning, criticizing, shutting down, controlling, and pleasing. We unconsciously expect our partner to soothe these exiles, make us feel worthy, prevent old wounds from being triggered, and provide perfect attunement. So we're expecting people to do that for us, right? This creates impossible expectations and chronic disappointment. Partners then trigger each other's protectors, and the relationship becomes a cycle of mutual activation rather than connection. The central insight of IFS couples work is your exiles are looking for you, not your partner. Instead of trying to get our partner to heal our wounds, IFS teaches us to turn towards our exiles with curiosity, compassion, and calm. Unburden them, provide them with the attunement and care they seek. When exiles feel cared for, protectors soften. When protectors soften, we can relate to from self instead of survival strategies. This is why Schwartz says, you're the one you've been waiting for. Right? So, and this is how relationship trigger parts. And Schwartz describes a pattern familiar to all couples. Something small happens, an exile gets activated. Not important, I'm alone, I'm being abandoned. A protector immediately takes over with anger, withdrawal, pleasing, control, logic, or intellectualizing, criticizing, or shutting down. And so then the partner's protectors respond in kind, and then the couple enters a polarization where a protector fights protector. So that's the pattern that he describes, all right? The partners think they're arguing about dishes, tone of voice, money, sex, bedtime routines, that they're actually arguing about acceptance, visibility, safety, worth, connection, and vulnerability. Okay. So IFS intimate relationship work, the path to unburdened love. In intimate relationship, unburdened love is the goal. It happens when partners lead with self energy rather than protectors. So remember the 8 C's, right? You know about that. In unburdened love, partners can see each other accurately, not through the distortions of past wounds. They can respond rather than react. They can repair ruptures quickly. There is room for each partner's full spectrum of emotions and needs. Intimacy becomes safe. So Schwartz emphasizes that self is not fragile. It is the most relational, steady part of us. Schwartz describes 3 styles of love based on how parts operate. Young love, partners from exiles who show up as clinging, jealousy, dependency, fear of abandonment, and demands for reassurance. Protector love, partnering from defenders' parts who show up as control, criticism, perfectionism, withdrawal, overfunctioning, and emotional distance. And self-led love, which is, of course, the one you want to go for, which self-led love is the goal. It shows up as open-hearted, curious, non-defensive, playful, honest, and deeply connected. The other loves are from parts, right? But self-led part is the goal. Only self-led love can transform the system of the relationship. So IFS, intimate relationship work, going inside before going outside. So Schwartz teaches us when triggered to pause. This is a summary, right? Ask, what part of me is activated right now? 3, turn inward. What does this part need? 4, bring compassion, understanding, and presence to the part. 5, then and only then turn towards your partner. This prevents the protector-to-protector battles that drive conflict cycles and allows a self-to-self conversation instead. This means your partner is not responsible for healing your childhood wounds. Your partner is not your parent and can't be. Self-leadership is the foundation of healthy intimacy. Love deepens when partners can notice their parts, care for their own system, speak for their parts, not from them, and be curious about the partner's parts. When both partners do this, conflict becomes connection. So IFS teaches that our partners trigger our old wounds so that we can finally heal them. So our partners trigger our old wounds so we can finally heal them. Not through them, but through our own self-leadership. Partners can be tormentors or mentors. So he uses these words, which I think they can be our mentors, even if it's a difficult relationship. Okay, so there's also a step-by-step algorithm, because we're into algorithms in this course. And this is where we're going to do the role play in a minute. All right. So this is summary of IFS conflict edit, splice, and paste algorithm. All right. So let me read through that. So begin. You want to choose a video clip. So pick a short, specific conflict moment. Now, this is like a conflict that happened in your intimate relationship. Okay. Where did connection break? Okay, so there's always, if you look at the topography, there's always a moment where you became activated, when the connection broke. Okay, so that's number 1. So watch the video from a calm distance. Observe, don't relive. So first of all, you have to have the video, right? Which parts appear? In what order? Pause at the moment you lost self. Identify the protector taking over. What did it fear? Turn towards the protector. Offer curiosity, compassion, understanding. Thank it for trying to help. Ask what it needs. Meet the exile beneath the protector. Let the protector show you the vulnerable one. Soothe, comfort, witness. Replay the scene while staying in self. Run the same moment again internally. How would self speak, act, or listen here? And so then you might be, there's two ways you can do this. You might be doing it with your partner, or you might be doing it by yourself. So if you're working alone, your partner isn't into this work, you have to integrate internally. What did my parts learn? What will self try next time? However, if your partner's also doing this work, and if they're willing to do this work, you take turns sharing self-led narratives. Speak for parts, not from them. The partner listens without defending. And then you update the system. Support protectors, reinforce self-leadership, integrate new patterns. And that's the end. I know, I mean, it's kind of like just in one page there. That's the algorithm for IFS couples therapy, right? Now, it's not as easy as just reading that. It's something you have to work with. That's how IFS does it, right? So, I'm going, let me just go tell you these steps, because there's 8 steps. Just go a little deeper into each of the steps. So step 1, choose the video clip of the conflict. Pick one specific argument or moment of tension. Keep it short, 10 to 60 seconds, of the moment things went sideways. Ask yourself, where exactly did I notice a shift from connection to conflict? What was the moment my body tightened or my voice changed? This isolates the crucial segment where your parts became activated, right? So step 2, watch the video clip from a calm distance, not to relive, but to observe. Imagine sitting in a theater watching the conflict unfold on the screen. At this point, your job is not to judge anything, but to notice what showed up inside you. Let the video roll and ask, which parts of me got activated first, second, third? What did each part try to do? Protect, defend, retreat, argue, explain, criticize, shut down? What was the vulnerable exile underneath that protector? What was the vulnerable exile underneath that protector that the protector was guarding? You are mapping the sequence of parts. Okay, so I think by now you follow what I'm saying, right? Because we did all the IFS work. Okay, step 3, pause the video at the first moment you lost self. Look for the moment where you raised your voice, shut down, defended, lectured, got sarcastic, withdrew, escalated, froze, intellectualized, or tried to win. This is the protector moment, takeover moment. Ask, what took the wheel here? What was I afraid would happen if I didn't protect me? This begins the internal dialogue. Okay. Step 4, turn towards the part with compassion. Now invite self-energy forward, curiosity, calm, compassion. Say internally to that part, I see you. I get why you jumped in. You were trying to protect me. You don't have to handle this alone. Let me be here with you now. Let the part tell you what it feared, what it needed, what it believed about the partner. When the part feels hurt, it softens. Okay. Step 5, find and comfort the exile. Protector parts always guard something more tender. Ask the softened protector, who are you protecting? Who are you protecting? Can you show me the one who you're worried about? When the exile appears, bring self-energy to it. Offer warmth, presence, understanding, soothing, grounding, and acknowledgement of its pain. The exile does not need the partner to change. It needs you. Stay until it feels calmer or less alone. Step 6, replay the conflict while staying in self. Return to the theater. Run the video again. Same situation, same partner, same words, but now you remain seated in self. Let your compassionate centered self respond instead of the protector. Ask, how would self have spoken? What tone would self use? What would self understand about my partner's pain in that moment? What boundary or truth could self state without aggression or collapse? You are building new internal templates. This is the healing moment. And step 7, okay, if the partner is not doing reciprocal work, so your partner is not also doing this work, stop here and integrate. You do not need your partner's participation for this to create relief and clarity. You can hold the insight privately and allow your system to reorganize around self-leadership. This is often enough to shift the dynamic. Okay? So even if your partner is not doing this, if you do it, it's going to change your relationship. Guaranteed, because you're changing. Okay? It's better when your partner is doing the work too, but you can do it alone. Okay? So, but if both partners are able, if they're both committed to doing the work, then the next step after you've done this work on your own is to share self-led narratives. If the partner is willing and able to do reciprocal work, set the structure. Each person takes a turn speaking for himself. Each person speaks for their parts, not from them. The listening partner does not interrupt, correct, or defend. The sharing partner says, here's the one I saw protecting me. Here's what that part feared. Here's the hurt exile underneath. Here's how I reacted. Here's what myself understands now. They narrate the internal sequence, not the partner's wrongdoing. So they narrate what went on within them. The listening partner says only, thank you for sharing that. I can understand why that part felt that way. And is there anything that part still needs me to know? Then you switch roles. This is powerful because both people are regulated, vulnerable, curious, and compassionate. It transfers conflict into intimacy. Okay. Now, okay, you can put that, I can say that to you in 15 minutes, but this takes a long time to do. Okay. And it takes you actually doing it, right? Not just hearing about it, but actually going out and trying it. And then step 8. So we looked at step 7. Update the system after sharing or after solo work. Ask internally, what did each part learn? What will we try next time? What boundary or communication patterns needs refinement? How can self lead earlier in the sequence next time? You're rewiring the conflict cycle. And then step 9, close with gratitude and integration. Thank the protectors and exiles for showing themselves and affirm, I'm here now, I can lead. We can do this differently next time. This seals the work. So in summary, take a conflict memory, identify the parts that were activated, soothe them, replay the scene from self, and optional, share self-led insights with your partner, and then update the system.
Is sharing this type of thing?
It's being recorded, by the way. Just to let you know. Sorry? Okay.
The sharing this type of thing with somebody who isn't, the sharing, is that a license to do?
We're gonna give you an example of that. Okay. In the role play, there's an example of that. Okay. So, all right. This turns arguments into opportunities for repair and growth, even if you're the only one doing the work. Okay. So that's a summary. I already read through that before. And there's 2 pathways to relationship repair. Only one person is committed to doing the work. And the second pathway is both people are committed to doing the work. Change is possible in both cases, but each requires a different approach and algorithm. So step-by-step algorithm for conversations between partners. Okay, this is where we're going to do the role play. This version begins after each partner has completed their own internal conflict rewind. It provides an algorithm for the conversation that follows step 7B above. That is, if both partners are willing to take turns sharing self-led narratives, speaking for parts, not from them, and to listen without defending. The goal is not to rehash the argument. The goal is to understand each person's internal sequences, the parts, needs, wounds, fears, and protective strategies that drove the conflict. It turns conflict into connection. Okay, so before we do the, because before I did the algorithm just for, what you do by yourself, this is the algorithm for the joint conversation that you can have. So if you're going to have a joint conversation, follow this. Do the other one first, and then follow this. So this is the partner version, step by step. This is for conversation repair between 2 partners. So set the conditions for safety. Both partners agree on no interruptions, no correcting or fact checking, no defending, no no counter arguments, no analysis of partners' parts. Each person will share from self-energy as best as they can. If either partner drops into protectors, pause and regulate before continuing. Okay, so you have to be aware of it if you're going to protectors. This side who goes first, this is important. The partner who feels least activated begins. They have more access to self. The other partner listens first. Their job is to understand, not justify. Okay, and then 3, the sharing partner speaks for, not from, speaks for their parts. The speaking partner uses a simple template. Here's the first part I noticed in the conflict. He described the part, not the partner's behavior. A fearful part showed up, a perfectionist part, a small exile who felt invisible. B, this is what that part felt. It felt threatened, it felt overwhelmed, felt criticized, it felt alone. So when you're looking at this, does this remind you of the DBT? We talked about interpersonal effectiveness. We talked about the Dear Man, Give Fast. This is a really kind of, more sophisticated, right? IFS, Dear Man, Give Fast script, because that's what Dear Man, Give Fast script, that's what it's for. It's for to have those conversations. This is like very similar, but it's informed by parts, right? Whereas DBT is more just trying to be a rational kind of argument with the other person or rational conversation. So then B, this is what the part felt. It felt threatened, felt overwhelmed, felt criticized, it felt alone. This is what the part feared. It was afraid of being dismissed, afraid of abandonment, afraid of not mattering. This is how it protected me. It shut down, it snapped, it explained, it withdrew. Underneath, there was an exile who held this pain, described the hurt part gently, if comfortable. Here's what I understand now from self. I can see how intense that was. It wasn't really about the dishwasher. It was about worth. I can see how young that part felt. Here's what this part of me needs going forward. Keep it simple, concrete, and relational. This entire sequence is self-led narrative, not a critique of the partner. Okay. The listening partner's only job is to witness with compassion. The listener holds curiosity and warmth. The only permitted responses are, thank you for sharing that. I can see why that part felt that way. Is there anything else that part wants me to know? That makes sense. I hear you. No corrections, no interpretations, no explanations, no problem solving, no counter story. The listener does not share their own parts yet. They simply receive. Then you switch roles, right? Now the second partner becomes a sharing partner and moves through the same step, self-led narrative. We already through that. I won't go through it again. The partner who just shared now listens with openness and gentleness. And then there's an optional mutual understanding step. After both have shared, each partner may offer a self-led statement of understanding, such as, I didn't know that's what your part was feeling. Thank you for trusting me with this. That helps me understand the intensity. I can see how that protector was trying to help. This reinforces trust and attunement. And then you create a joint next time plan. Now both partners from self ask, what can we do differently next time this pattern begins? How can we help each other notice protectors early? What signals tell us we're leaving self? What small repair actions work for us? Keep it simple, a hand gesture, a pause word, a grounding breath together, a 5-minute break rule, a sentence like, part of me is getting activated. This becomes the couple's self-led conflict blueprint. Each partner first does their own internal repair, then they come together and take turns sharing from self. The sequence of parts that were activated, the partner listens without defending, which transforms conflict into mutual understanding and deeper connection. Okay, and so that's like just a summary. I won't go over that. That's for conversations, what you do in conversations, right? Same thing. Right, won't go over that. So that's a checklist I can use after to check that you've done all these steps. All right. All right. Now we come. So this is actually a template. You're getting really into the nitty-gritty. This is something you can actually read out loud. You can just fill in the blanks, but you can read out loud to your partner if you're doing this work. Okay, so the following is a structured template. So we talked about algorithms. This is like what you can read to your partner after you've done all this work. So opening, both say together or one reads aloud. And we're going to have an example of this. Let's agree to speak from self as much as possible and to speak for our parts, not from them. Let's agree to listen without defending or interrupting. This is for understanding, not for determining who's right. So you can both say that at the beginning. This is exactly what you might say. So partner A shares the inner sequence. Partner A says, the first part that showed up in me was, in the protector, this part felt, this part feared, this part tried to protect me by. Underneath, I found an exile who felt. From self, I now understand that. And going forward, this part of me needs. Okay, so just fill in blanks, right? After you have to do that work first. Then partner B response. Partner B says only, thank you for sharing that. I see why that part felt that way. That makes sense. Or is there anything else that part wants me to know? Nothing else. No explanations, no corrections, no perspective taking, just compassionate witnessing. Switch roles. Partner B now shares their part sequence using the exact same 7 steps. Partner A listens using the same compassionate responses. And then mutual understanding. Partner A says, one thing I understand better now is. Partner B says, one thing I understand better now is, keep it short, gentle, self-led. Okay, so this is very concrete, something you can really use after you've done all this work. Next time, collaborative plan. Together, each partner answers, here's one cue that tells me my protector is taking over. Here's how I'll try to let you know a part is activated. Here's one thing that helps me stay in self during conflict. Here's one thing I can offer you when you're activated, and close by thanking each other. Okay, so that's a very concrete template you can use. And here we come to the role play, which is the fun part. And it allows me to stop talking because I can go much longer. Okay, do you guys want to come up? I don't have so like the 3 of you. Sorry. Sorry. Yeah.
Wondered if you don't have a partner, does this
I know.
apply at all?
It doesn't have to be a partner. It could be like something you're intimate with, like child or sister or brother, or it's about intimate relationships, right?
So you could say have a sister.
It could be a sister. Yeah. Okay. So here's the thing.
Would you like me to pause before people are doing
No,
the
that's
roll?
okay.
No? Okay.
We're going to record this because it's just Joe and Nicole and Stu.
Oh, it's just Joan and Nicole and Stu.
Yeah, it's
They
just
can be
Joan and
recorded.
Nicole.
Got it.
Yes.
So one of you guys, so 2 of you guys, like Stu and Nicole, I don't have like a copy of this. So you're going to have to go over there to read.
Oh, okay.
Maybe grab a chair if you want.
Okay. And then I read the yellow part.
You read the yellow part. Okay.
Do you want the camera?
Yeah, we can turn the camera on them.
Okay.
Who do you want to be the?
So there's usually there's a man and a woman. So you can pick, you can be whoever, you can be the woman or the man.
I know that it's Alex and Jamie and
They're both.
So I think, let's see. I think Jamie, I think Jamie is the man
Okay,
and Alex,
okay.
and Alex is the woman here.
Okay. All right.
Right.
Okay, so you read the yellow.
Yeah, so I'll turn the
Yeah.
camera.
Oh, I can do it.
Okay,
Okay,
all right.
When do we get to stand up?
what's that?
When do we get to stand up?
Oh, you want to stand up now for a minute? Yeah, we can do that. We can stand up for a minute. I know, just stand up for a minute. Is the camera okay there or?
Oh.
Okay,
That's great.
is that okay? Okay, all right,
This down to on that volume,
okay.
right on the table, once I'm done talking.
Oh, yeah, I'll put another chair there.
Just put it on the table.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
So let's just give them a minute.
Yeah.
I've heard yeah.
Wait.
Because
I know. Unfortunately.
What's unfortunate?
that like farms under IFS conflict repair, thanks to charge free screen. Just about.
The yellow.
No, okay.
Okay, we'll speak really loud.
I guess I just, I need new class.
It's hard to yellow.
Yeah. That's challenging to me. Well,
It is.
You can take the first.
Okay.
So,
This is all just one.
That sounds good.
Yeah, you can type. Joe, you're reading the yellow.
I read the,
I'll be Alex.
you're Alex and Stu is Jamie. A would be Alex. I guess. This part on this page. Halfway down, partner in the other, partner A shirt. Okay, so that's you. I think.
Okay, for Alex, like.
Let's go with it.
Let's go, yeah. I'll see what's on the next page.
no, wait, I'll
Watch it though.
Oh,
Are you jumping?
Are we ready? Okay, we'll get started. Welcome back, everyone. So this is a role play using IFS, couples trying to repair a conflict. There's two partners, Alex, played by Nicole, and Jamie, played by Stu, are reworking an argument using IFS. The setting, Alex and Jamie are going to walk through the IFS conflict repair process. Notice how they speak for parts, not from them, and how the listening partner only reflects and witnesses. Alex and Jamie sitting facing each other. Both take a breath. They begin. The opening agreement.
Let's try to speak. Let's try to speak from self as much as we can. Let's speak for our parts, not from them. We'll listen without interrupting, correcting, or defending.
Okay, I'll start. The argument we're working with is when you come home late from work. I'll share the sequence of parts I noticed. The first, oh, sorry, do you want to read that?
The first part that showed up.
The first part that got activated was a worried, anxious protector. It showed up the moment I realized you were late and hadn't texted.
What that part felt.
That part felt abandoned and tense. It was scanning for danger.
What that part feared.
It was afraid that I didn't matter, that I wasn't a priority. It believed I might be left alone again.
How it protected.
So it protected me by getting sharp with you the moment you walked in. It went into a controlling tone. Why didn't you text me? You always do this.
The exile underneath.
When I paused later and checked inside, I found a younger exile, a little one who once waited for someone who didn't come home. That exile felt scared and forgotten.
What self now understands.
From self, I understand now that this wasn't about you not texting. It was about an old fear waking up inside me. You were the nearest person, so the fear came out as anger.
What the part needs moving forward.
That exile needs reassurance that I matter and that I'm not being left behind. And my protector needs me to slow down and check inside before speaking.
Jamie responds.
Thank you for sharing that. I can see why that part felt that way. That makes sense. Is there anything else that part wants me to know?
Okay, so now we're switching roles. Stu, you're going to share.
Okay, I'll share my parts or my part sequence.
The first part that showed up.
Yeah, so the first part that showed up when I walked in was a tired, shut down protector. I had a really draining day.
What the part felt.
That part felt really overwhelmed and just wanted peace.
What the part feared.
I was afraid that if I didn't shut down, the evening would turn into another long fight. A really dreaded conflict.
How it protected.
So it protected me by going cold and quiet. I barely said hello and walked past you into the kitchen.
The exile underneath.
And underneath that withdrawal, I found a younger exile who grew up in a house where getting emotional was dangerous. That exile still believes that speaking up will make everything worse.
What self now understands.
From self, I understand that I wasn't shutting you out. I was shielding that scared child part. I didn't know your protector was reacting to old fears too.
What the part needs moving forward.
The exile in me needs gentleness and a space to warm up, and my protector needs permission to slow down instead of disappearing.
And now Alex responds.
Thank you for telling me that. I can see why that part shut down. That helps me understand what happened. Is there anything that part needs from me right now?
No, just this understanding.
So mutual understanding step.
One thing I understand better now is that your withdrawal wasn't about not caring. It was a scared part trying to stay safe.
And I understand that your anger wasn't really anger, it was fear of being forgotten.
Now, next time plan. And now they create a simple plan.
When I feel my anxious protector rising, I'll try to name it. A part of me is getting scared. I'll try to pause before speaking.
And if I feel myself withdrawing, I'll say, a part of me is overwhelmed and needs a minute. I'll try not to disappear.
And I'll try not to interpret your quiet as rejection.
And I'll try not to interpret your questions as attack.
Closing.
Thank you for doing this with me. Take a slow breath together. We were on point. We almost had
What
it.
did you think?
I think we should have got a couple of actors in to do it.
Yeah, that's the first time we read it. I thought we did pretty good.
Oh, no, I didn't think your reading was inappropriate. I just thought, they really go at it. Well, not that this is a go at it kind of thing.
Okay, yes. I think they were both inside the window of tolerance. They were both very
Yes.
calm in this interaction. And that is what's really, really important. Yeah. Do you want?
We're gonna do another role play. So that was where both partners were willing to do the work. We're gonna do one where only one partner is doing the work. Okay, but before we do that, I just want to, yeah, do you wanna,
Stay here?
do you wanna,
Okay.
yeah,
No, I'm
do you wanna
fine.
sit?
No, I'm good.
You're good?
Go for
Okay,
it.
so obviously, like, only one partner doing work is harder. So these are some things to keep in mind when you're the only one doing the work, which is often happens, right? So, is it possible to improve a relationship if only one person is working at it? Absolutely, because relationships are systems. Any input into a system changes the whole system. But in this case, only one person is at the action stage of change, right? The other person is not at the action stage. In a conflict, one person may go into their usual mode of activation, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, while the other tries to stay in self and the window of tolerance. So if you're doing this work, you're trying to stay in self. but the other person is going to go into their usual mode of activation, which can be triggering for you, right? Because emotions are contagious. This is the basis of nonviolent resistance movements. Jesus, when he turned the other cheek, it's not easy to do. So he was trying to stay loving while other people were, feeling angry and hateful, and so that's really hard to do. So it's a challenge. Change is easier and more likely if both people in the relationship are at the action stage. But if the other person, they're blaming you, and you're kind of trying to do this work, that makes it hard. One of the things that makes this difficult is that when two people interact, they tend to mirror the other's activation states and both be in and out of the window of tolerance. Okay, so that's what makes it harder. So challenges when only one person's committed to the repair work. People in a relationship develop mental models of each other. Emotional dysregulation affects these mental models. When one person is learning to stay in rational, wise mind, the other person's mental map of them doesn't immediately change. They will assume that the person is doing the work as playing games. So if you're going to do something different, rather than, because people know your patterns, if you do something different, the other person is going to notice that. Going, what are you doing? What kind of games are you playing? Because they're used to you doing, expecting the same thing. So they're going to be suspicious. They're going to go, what goes on? And they're going to try to bring the conversation back to the old pattern. You're trying to kind of steer it towards a new pattern, right? So if one person is more able to stay in self over the long term, the other person's mental models of them are more likely to change. So meaning that we have mental models, we have expectations of what the other person is going to do, right? But if you're changing, right, I'm not going to have a new mental model right away. It's go, oh, this person has changed. I'm still going to go, no, this, have the old mental model for this person. It's like, you're going to expect this person to be the old way. And you're going to be, there's dissonance here, right? So this process is slow, can be triggering and frustrating because one person may be making a big effort to change, but may not be given any credit for that work. In fact, if you're doing this work, people may become suspicious. They're going, what are you doing? This is making things worse, right? If the other person is pre-contemplative and thinks you're solely to blame for the problems and you stop engaging them the way you previously did, they may think it's an admission they were right and have won, right? If you become more conciliatory, you kind of, oh, yeah, I was right, right? So that can be really hard. This can trigger you in you more hurt and feelings that you've misunderstood. If you're the only one working at the action stage of change, you will have to do a lot of editing, splicing, and pasting. You will have to foster self. So you're going to have to do a lot of this before, right? You actually have a conversation with the person. You will have to become good at staying at the window of emotional tolerance, no matter what the other person does. That might trigger you. You may want to review coping with resistance and conflict skills, pages 244 to 252, the skills training workbook. You also want to consider if the relationship is worth the amount of work and effort you will need to put into it. If you're not reasonably physically safe in a relationship, repair is impossible. Your number one priority, as long as you stay in the relationship, should be to be physically safe. If you're committed to staying in a difficult relationship, you may have to adjust your expectations that the other person will give you what you need and settle for simply trying to make the relationship less conflictual. Okay, so this is the IFS role play when only one partner is self-led. Okay, so here, I think
It's the same as Taylor.
Taylor and Riley.
Taylor and Robin.
Yeah.
So is Taylor's.
Can't they both be men?
They can both do that, but I think it doesn't matter.
It doesn't.
It doesn't matter. I don't think it's.
Okay, gender-based, okay.
Okay, so this is when only one partner is self-led. So this script shows one partner, Taylor, played by Nicole, doing responsible, self-led IFS work. The other partner, Riley, played by Stu, showing protector-driven behaviors, defensive, dismissive, irritated. The conflict still moving towards resolution because only one person stays in self. It models realism without shaming the unwilling partner. The stage setting. In this scenario, Taylor wants to use IFS to repair a conflict. Riley is not ready for parts work yet today, and that's okay. You'll see how one partner rooted in self can change the entire dynamic even when the other remains in protectors. So the opening.
Want me to grab the?
Oh, right. All right, the microphone.
Okay. Thanks for sitting with me for a couple of minutes. I did some inside work on what happened yesterday, and I'd like to share what I learned about myself. You don't need to do anything. I'm not asking you to do parts work. Just hearing me out is enough.
Alright, fine, just keep it short.
Taylor shares their internal sequence, no judgment, no blame. Naming the activated protector.
When we were arguing, the first part that showed up in me was a panicked, anxious protector. It got really loud inside.
What the part felt and feared.
That part felt scared and alone. It was afraid that I didn't matter to you.
How the protector behaved.
So that fear came out as controlling questions and a sharp tone. That was my protector trying to manage the fear inside.
The exile underneath.
When I checked in later, I found a younger part of me underneath, one that hates the feeling of being left behind.
Self-understanding.
From self, I can see now that the argument wasn't really about what time you got home. It was that old exile feeling triggered.
What Taylor is not asking for.
I'm not asking you to change or agree or do anything special. I just want to let you know what was happening inside me, so you don't have to guess.
Riley responds in a protector-driven way, realistic, non-ideal.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't do anything wrong. You're clearly kind of overthinking this.
I hear that, and I'm not saying you did anything wrong. I'm just explaining what was happening inside me, so there's less confusion next time.
Riley softens maybe 5%. A protector feels less attacked. A tiny request, not a demand.
One thing that helps my system settle is just a short check-in text when plans change, only if you're able. If not, I'll keep working with this part on my end.
Carried by self, not by demand, Riley doesn't feel controlled.
Yeah, I suppose I can do that most of the time.
Taylor does the self-led repair without expecting reciprocating.
And just so you know, I'm going to work with that fear part in me, so it doesn't jump in so fast next time. I don't want to aim that panic at you.
Riley, now less guarded, makes a minor, realistic response.
Hey, I mean, I didn't know you felt all that. I'm not great at all this emotional stuff, but thanks for telling me. This is a huge relational success given where we started.
Thank you for listening. That's all I needed today.
Okay, that was fine. I appreciate you explaining it.
So this script shows something very important. You do not need two self-led partners to make progress. One self-led partner shifts the entire system. Taylor modeled, speaking for parts, no blame, no demands, radical ownership of their own inner system, offering the partner freedom rather than pressure, and staying in self, even when met with protectors. Riley's protectors softened because they were not being attacked or coerced. Do we want to continue in here?
We're good.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. You guys can stay there if you want. All right. So, what in the slides there? So I updated the algorithms this year. The algorithms I presented to you were new. The ones you are there in the slides are from last year. Okay, they're pretty similar, slightly different, but I'm not going to go over them because they're pretty similar. So I would say just stick with the ones that I presented early, but this is an alternative. Okay, and then I'm not going to go over this, but in the book, I don't know if it's in the book, maybe it's not in the book, but I wonder if it's in the book. I did a couple of years ago, I did a bunch of videos that are on YouTube, and I have 2 examples of what Joan, Nicole, and Stu just did, right? But I'm narrating, so it's not 2 people. I'm not going to play it for you, but it's on the YouTube videos, right? Do you want me to play it with? No, I think we'll just go to questions. And so there's just 2 videos there of same thing that Stu and Nicole did. All right. Yeah, so I think, and the rest of the videos there are just different videos you might enjoy. So that's John Gottman. It's a TED Talk by him and his wife. And that's Tatkin. That's what's his name? Alan Britton. Why You Will Marry the Wrong Person. Great video as well. So there's a bunch of videos there at the end. That you might. And that's Waldinger. I mentioned him earlier. Yeah, so I think I will just stop sharing there. And I think we can also stop the recording. And let's just go to questions and comments about that. I know it's a lot of material, so it wasn't like the full 4 hours, it's 3.5 hours. But